Hello, everybody.
Hey Arthur, how are you?
Hey, Arthur's in there. Good.
Yeah.
Hi, Arthur.
Hi, Arthur.
And, hi, everybody. I just realized my audio wasn't on.
I can't figure out my video right now, so.
Where's Stu?
I was thinking the same
He
thing.
texted me like half hour ago and I said, I'll see you at 7. So not sure where he is.
Wasn't Bruce just here? Am I crazy? I thought I saw Bruce.
Yeah, he was just here.
Apparently Stu says I didn't send him the link, so I guess I'm not sure how to send him the link. I'll try to figure it out because the meeting's already started, so it's pretty difficult.
Can one of us send a link to Stuart for the email or something? Lucia?
I mean, if you have it, because it's a computer generated, so it doesn't come from me. It comes from Zoom, so I don't have access to when you guys get those emails. I mean, I can try to go back in, but I get a
I'll
little
try to-
nervous, like I'm gonna,
I'll forward it to Stuart.
okay, I'm gonna try, hopefully,
Can Pat do that?
no, I'm looking, hold on, I think I can do it. I'm a little nervous about doing it because the meeting's already started, and if I do something wrong, the meeting's over.
Well, it hasn't started yet.
I just
Well,
forwarded to
The
Stuart.
meeting is technically started because I started the Zoom.
That's all right. It's not opened yet. The meeting hasn't been opened.
Yeah, but you don't understand what I'm saying. Like if I do something wrong on Zoom and the meeting's closed, I can't that's it, the meeting's over. Like I can't go back in and restart this meeting with this meeting ID, so we wouldn't be able to have a meeting.
Why
Another
don't
reason I
don't
just
let
love Zoom.
why don't you let one of us send the text?
I just
Yeah.
forwarded the link to him.
Cool.
He says he should arrive, be here momentarily.
Bruce, you probably want to mute yourself.
We can start the meeting. We have a quorum and come back and just, when the steward arrives, we'll just continue. You don't like that?
Did you say he was trying to log on?
Yeah, but I was just saying, I mean, we could start. It's 7:07 now, right?
Yeah. Just give him another minute.
I just called Stu, and if you want to open it, because we're gonna have to continue the first one anyway, at least you can, sorry, Mike, to put you on the spot, if you can read that blurb. I was just looking to make sure I put it on the OneDrive for you. Doesn't look like I did, sorry, I can get that on there right now.
I have it. Okay, is Stu gonna, here he is.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And you can see me.
All right.
Sorry about that. Thanks for everybody's help. All right. Where's my agenda? Here we go. This is the 11th January. And I can't find the memo for doing it by Zoom, but by law we can do Zoom meetings.
You want me to just read it for you,
Yeah,
Stu?
do you have it? Read it for me, please.
Okay. You all ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Peabody Conservation Commission hearings will be held remotely until March 31st of 2023. Remote participation is allowed in accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2021, signed into law by Governor Baker on February 12th of 2022, suspending certain provisions on the open meeting law based on general laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, as extended by Section 20 of Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022. Individuals may participate remotely in the meeting by a remote participation platform called Zoom.
Thank you. We have 3 notices of intent and 3 enforcement orders to discuss. So I'll start out with the notices of intent. Continue public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by Hayes Engineering, Inc., Anthony Capicelli for Centennial Residences LLC, Arthur Pyramidal, proposed work on the construction of multifamily residential building with associated driveways, parking, access, utilities within a buffer zone to BVD and IBWs. Property is known as 190R Newberry Street. Did I get a note to continue this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think they've asked to continue this to the February hearing.
All right, so I need a motion to continue it to February.
Motion to continue, item number 1, to our next meeting in February.
Second.
That motion was
Motion.
made by Vice Chairman Rizzo, seconded by Commissioner Comac. Roll call. Commissioner Lazares,
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo,
Yes,
Commissioner Vivaldi,
Yes,
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
and Commissioner Comac.
Yes.
So the item passes 7-0 unanimously. It's continued. And you were also supposed to read everyone's name aloud that was present. I don't know if that was done, so I pretty much just did that. He didn't do that, right?
No, we didn't do it. We
So
can
we
do it
have
now.
Stuart, Chairman Stuart Lazares, Vice Chairman Michael Rizzo, Secretary Michael Vivaldi, Commissioner Amanda Green, Commissioner Cavicchio, Commissioner Arthur Athos, and Commissioner Bruce Comac, all present.
Thank you. Item 2, continue public hearing and notice of intent submitted by GZA Geo Environmental, Inc., Dan Nitschke for Emmanuel and Rose Papanikolaou owners and JD Raymond Transport. Will Boyle applicant. Proposed work is construction of stormwater infiltration basin partially within a buffer zone to a wetland resource. The property is known as 25 Farm Ave, map 69, lot 006 and 007, Peabody, Mass. Brendan there?
I am here.
All right, take it away.
They've provided, we've had several peer reviews done. They've addressed most of the comments. There was one more round of peer review. I got the applicant the most recent. I think there was a lot of just incorporating some additional information in the O&M plan. And then I wrote a memo to you guys with 2 different comments, one with regards to the catch basins near the driveway. And then, still just suggesting or to consider a height restriction on the mulch piles. I think about it.
Dan, do you have any comments? You have to unmute
I think Kim, do you want to start it off for the group?
Yes, great.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. Thank you.
Hi,
This
Kim.
is- Hi, Kim Crowa, Baker Braveman, Barbadoro, on behalf of the applicant JD Raymond. And I am not sure that I see Steve DM.
I just texted him to say we're
Okay.
on, so.
Okay, all right.
That's my
So-
fault. I didn't know if he was on your team. I'm going to promote him now.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, great, perfect, thank you. So I'm joined today by Dan Nietzsche and Steve D'Ambrosio, both from GZA, and also Will Boyle on behalf of JD Raymond. So I'm going to start by giving just a little bit of a background of the project and the use. Steve's going to talk about the plan itself and the peer review comments, including a couple suggestions that we have tonight to incorporate some of the outstanding comments that were received recently, including adding a weekly inspection to the catch basins. That was a concern raised by Brendan Callahan and by the peer review. And then after Steve, Dan will discuss an alternative proposal for vegetation than what's shown on our plan to try to accommodate some of the other comments raised by the peer review and Brendan Callahan. So first, just a background on the proposal. We had submitted the NOI for authorization to construct the stormwater system in the buffer zone. The wetland areas were confirmed in the field by GZA when we filed the notice of intent. And in accordance with the standard conditions, we would put up the flags when we start construction. After the initial filing, we added some additional fire safety components to the project, including a fence that we installed at request of the fire department and a hydrant that's proposed at the entry point. We did have a follow-up meeting with Captain Dowling earlier today, and we would like to go forward with installing that fire hydrant where it's proposed with an upgraded line, just changing it from an 8-inch line to a 10-inch line. And then we'll be working with the fire department to figure out a good location for a second hydrant, and that'll be added later on. But we all sort of want to go full speed ahead with that first hydrant while we figure out where the best location for the second one would be. And then the project was redesigned after review of peer reviews and test pits. And so the project before you is being proposed and reviewed under the redevelopment standard of the stormwater standards. That's because it's a existing impervious site, and therefore it's generally required to meet the stormwater standards to the maximum extent practicable. The redevelopment standard is particularly applicable to projects like this because the definitions in the Wetlands Protection Act at 310 CMR 1004 provide the redevelopment projects include remedial projects specifically designed to provide improved stormwater management. I just want to point out to the commission, and the commission did receive a copy, but JD Raymond received a letter of compliance from Mass DEP a couple months ago, November 2022, confirming that the site complies with wetland replication that was performed on site in response to much earlier filling and establishment of impervious areas that occurred prior to 2010. Just another background point, JD Raymond does have a multi-sector general permit for the site, and in that connection has been testing the runoffs for about 3 years, and the test results show that there's essentially no oil and grease pollutants in the runoff. Our system, as will be discussed in more detail by the engineers who are more qualified to talk about the details of the system, but we do have the TSS removal treatments in the system. I also want to talk about the mulch pile height questions raised by Brendan Callahan and also by Hayes Engineering on behalf of the abutting property owner. JD Raymond it's a mulch processing site, so it's different from a landscape where they're holding the mulch for simple service out to a customer. It's a processing site, which means they take in tree and yard debris into the site, essentially just basically wood and other yard waste. There's a lot of different companies and people who bring the debris there. The city of Peabody has been bringing their tree and yard debris there since 2001 at no cost, and sometimes twice a day deliveries. And then JD Raymond takes that material and turns it into mulch. That process involves the decomposing of the mulch, and it really requires the pressure and the weight of the piles as a component of the recipe to make the mulch. So the state fire code provides that piles can be up to 60 feet in width, 60 feet in height, 300 feet in width, and 500 feet in length, as long as you meet the other requirements of the fire code. The Peabody Fire Department has confirmed that we do meet the other requirements of the fire code, with the exception of finalizing the location of the second hydrant that the fire department believes, and we agree is a suitable and proper addition to the plan to provide additional fire safety there. There was a question raised about mulch in the wetlands, and while we don't expect this to be occurring, we would agree to add a condition that we will add to our inspections that will look for and remove any floating mulch in the wetland areas. After Steve describes the plan, Dan's going to describe additional ideas about trees and vegetation that will hopefully also respond to some of the comments about the mulch and the vegetation lining around the property. JD Raymond's a longstanding operation in the community. It provides this free recycling to the city that allows the city to avoid transporting the debris somewhere outside of Peabody or having their own stockpile, which can be a large height. We've got the team here to answer any questions. If the commission is satisfied that they have all of their questions answered and they don't need anything further, then we would ask for a vote to issue the order of conditions with the incorporations that we discussed tonight. And then Steve, I will turn it to you.
Thanks, Kim. Brendan, am I able to share my screen?
You'd have to ask Lucia. I would assume you can.
Should be able to now.
Okay. Is everyone seeing an aerial?
Yes.
I see some nods. Very good. All right. Thank you very much. My name is Steve D'Ambrosio. I'm a civil engineer with GZA, and I'll describe the proposed stormwater management for the project. So 25 Farm Avenue, this is the existing mulch facility. It's bound to the north by Forest Street, to the east and south by I-95, and to the west by Farm Avenue. This is an existing conditions plan. It's showing the existing drainage map. North in this view is to the left. The developed portion of the site is approximately 11.2 acres. We have an isolated wetland system here along the western edge of the developed portion of the site. There's also a BVW that goes from this area and loops around to the north and then back to the south along the eastern edge of the property. We've identified 3 different design points where water is leaving the site presently. That's design point 1, which is located off the southern edge of the entrance drive into the property. Design point 2, which is in the middle of the property along the western boundary. And then design point 3, which is located in the southeast corner of the site. Under proposed conditions, upstream of these design points, so design points 1, 2, and 3, we're proposing best management practices to treat for water quality. So upstream of DP1, we're proposing a series of deep sump hooded catch basins draining to a hydrodynamic separator, which then drains to a stilling well for energy dissipation before discharging to downstream areas. Up gradient of design point 2, we're proposing an infiltration basin, an at-grade infiltration basin with 2 sediment forebays up gradient of the basin. So the sediment forebays will provide pre-treatment before entering the infiltration basin, which has been designed to treat the water quality storm. We have something similar up gradient of design point 3. It's an at-grade infiltration basin, again with 2 sediment forebays in series to provide pre-treatment. We dug a series of test pits throughout the site. Those test pits were witnessed by Peabody City Engineer William Politz alongside a GZA employee, either Dan Nitchie, who's a certified soil scientist, Josh Highslip, who's an EIT, or myself. I'm a Massachusetts professional engineer. Based on the test pit information, we designed the basins to have 2-foot separation from groundwater. What the test pit information also revealed was that in the northern lobe of the property, there was historic fill, and the city and GZA agreed that this area was not an ideal candidate for infiltration. As such, we initially attempted to send stormwater from this area. And if you remember in the existing conditions drainage map, we have this large area here, which is about 105,000 square feet. We attempted to send this to infiltration basin 1 and treat the stormwater here. what became evident during that process was that it was not practical to treat for or to attenuate the peak rates of runoff coming to this design point. We were sending too much water to this design point and didn't have practical solution for that. So we pivoted back to the design which you see before you today, which is to retrofit an existing development with BMPs to treat for water quality and provide groundwater recharge. Through the peer review process, and my thanks to Janet Bernardo for her review comments, in addition to the stormwater BMPs I just described, the project also includes vegetative screening, which I believe is shown in our proposed drainage map. Vegetated screening in this area here, and also includes a 6-foot high chain link fence that will be outfitted with geotextile filter fabric. And that fence begins here and wraps around the property and ends over here. So that fence extends this entire length. Additionally, we understand that the peer reviewers suggested some supplemental spot grade information, and I'll pivot to another plan. The concern is that there's not enough information in this area to adequately describe the intent of the design, which is for upgrading and contributing areas to drain to the sediment forebay prior to getting into the infiltration basin. So we will definitely update this area to include additional spot grade information to better define that design intent. Let's see. We'll also update our O&M plan to include all the revisions suggested by the peer reviewer. And as Kim had touched on, we understand that there's some concern with the closed portion of the drainage system, which is, this is a zoomed in look at that. So we have a series of catch basins connected to a hydrodynamic separator, which will then go to a stilling well. This is a detail of the stilling well here. This is for energy dissipation. JD Raymond is committed to inspecting these catch basins in the hydrodynamic separator weekly instead of monthly, as is currently described in our O&M plan, and they'll immediately schedule cleanings when warranted. At this time, I'll turn it over to Dan Nitschke to discuss more of the planting plan. Thank you.
Dan, you're on mute.
My apology. So thank you, Steve, and thanks for keeping this design up. The screening, as you see on the map, says 4 to 6 foot arborvitae. We thought about that a little bit more from the perspective of potential wood mulch migrating through the air. And we think that we've got a little bit better planting idea. What we'd like to propose instead of arborvitae is Colorado blue spruce. Colorado blue spruce has a maximum height of 75 feet. It ranges from 50 to 75 feet. So that puts us in that 60-foot range that folks were looking, if the piles were allowed to be that high, that we would have something that would be similar in height. As folks know, spruce trees grow fairly dense. We plan to place them on a 15-foot on center arrangement. Their identified width is typically in the 10 to 15-foot range. So if we place them every 15 feet, we expect that the edges of the branches will interlock as they become mature, creating more of a full barrier for the wood mulch to keep that onto the property. We are proposing to put in 6 to 8 foot high Colorado blue spruce, and with the proper maintenance and maintaining them with water. They're supposedly, according to the information, they can tolerate drought, they can tolerate flooding, so they have a wide range of precipitation events that they can handle. We feel the density of that soil and rain events get on that, it's probably going to hold on to water quite a bit, which would be perfect for this tree. And I think we're going to have a successful growth out of them in that arrangement. So if we put those trees along that fence at 15 foot on center, at the height we were talking about 6 foot, 5 to 6 foot height, then over time, those trees will continue to grow, continue to expand in their diameter. And they will, by the time they're over the 6 foot high fence that will have a barrier on it, will have a filter fabric on it, those trees will now become more of a filter system above the fence line. So we're bringing in a tree that's about the height of the fence right now. So immediately they're going to start growing taller than the fence to start potentially managing or knocking down any floating wood mulch. So that's our idea for the tree line or the protective screening to be a little bit more robust and to also most likely create a better strainer or straining system to help knock down or strain out those wood mulch if it happens to be airborne in that location. And they tolerate full sun, which is perfect for this site because this site is a full sun site. And I think that's it. I don't think we were thinking of some other ideas, but I think a single row, 20 feet on center, 15 feet on center would be a good arrangement for the short term and the long term. And back to you, Steve or Kim.
I guess, can I make one comment? Is this all within around where the wetland areas are? It looks like the plantings here are, in vicinity of the infiltration basins. What about towards the driveway area where there's a much larger wetland system in that area? Are you proposing plantings in that area?
Will, would you weigh in on that?
I could.
You heard the question, Will?
Yeah,
Okay.
the driveway area has pretty significant natural vegetation that's there already. So we would actually have to remove existing vegetation to add spruces. So I don't know what good that would be doing. Of course, the spruces would be more dense because there's a lot of deciduous trees that are at the entrance. But I mean, that's something we could look at, but we would be removing existing plants and replacing them with new ones.
Right, we had previously proposed or have been proposing the trees along the wetland area and the adjacent property owner, where we understand a lot of the concern is coming from with respect to potential windborne concerns that they might have with those wetland areas. And although our operational plan says not to grind or do other operations that would cause mulch to fly during wind events and windy days, that's why the vegetation was proposed in the area that it is more of the buffering to the wetlands that are closer and more exposed in that area.
It sounds like you guys have addressed the problem. So I appreciate that. And the only question I have now is, has the city engineers looked at this and approved it?
You would need, I don't know if Bob Langley has provided any sort of information or response at least from the city engineers.
Okay, have these plans been submitted to the city? Did you see them, Brendan, and pass them on?
I've seen the plans. They've been distributed to Bob Langley. Yes.
All right, so we just have to wait for Bob.
Yes, and Chair, these were the plans that were submitted December 20th, and we did receive the peer review through Bob Langley after that point.
Okay.
And we've addressed all the comments in the peer review through the verbal presentation tonight, as it was after the written deadline.
And I appreciate that. I just want to get it documented by Bob that he agrees with it. But that's, is there a deadline for planting all these things? Do they work like you're going to start in the spring? When are you going to do this?
I mean, planting in the spring would be ideal, but it's not uncommon to be planting woody vegetation in the fall. They just need a little bit different care, but they tend to do okay as well.
Well, my question relates to getting the barrier in sooner rather than later to
Okay.
keep the mulch from piling up. But the chain link fence, I think you said, has got a fabric on it. Is the chain link fence 6 inches off the ground?
The fence is not, and the thought being with respect to the fence is that the wetland areas are all connected around the exterior. And although the Wetlands Protection Act typically has the 6-inch, the better path for the wildlife that are in the wetlands is to continue around the site instead of going through it.
Is there a sign for the wildlife to say go this way?
I'm more than happy to put one up.
Oh, thanks. I
Flashing
would
sign.
think it'd be better to raise it 6 inches to let the wildlife get in there, but I don't know the answer for mulch control. Also, the spruce grows, it's an evergreen, so it's green all year long.
Correct.
And when it grows vertically, don't the branches at the bottom like lose all the needles? It just gets more as it grows taller.
White spruce does that, not so much the blue spruce.
Okay, so
Yeah.
the blue spruce you're saying will continue to filter mulch, airborne mulch closer to the ground. Okay.
Right. I mean, the 6-foot fence with a fabric should take care of the lower elevation, and then the tree will
Right.
take care of everything above that. Right.
Okay.
Quick question to the applicant. First, is the blue spruce, is it a native species to New England, or is it you? I think you said Colorado blue spruce. If I'm
Well,
not mistaken.
Yeah, it was sort of found and matured, as it were, in Colorado, but it is native across the Northeast. Yeah, it's across the country. Yeah.
I thought so. Just wanted to verify that.
Yeah.
And then second, will the applicant commit to replacing and replanting any trees that die, that when new species like a tree like this get planted, it's possible that not enough water is dry months or something and the trees die? The applicant will commit to replanting as soon as possible any trees that die off.
That's a will question.
Yeah, we'll do an annual inspection and we'll replace anything. We'll have Dan out there like we do at some of our other sites to provide an annual inspection and make his recommendations. We certainly don't want to replace anything that might be stressed out when his opinion says that, it's going to make it. It just needs a little bit of TLC. So, but anything that Dan says after that annual report, we'll take care of.
Is there any way to put, I don't know, water lines along the planting so that you can water it in the dry season and keep them growing?
Yes, there is. We can put in a Netafim drip line. And
Is that a good idea from as far as you're concerned, or it should resolve the problem of drought?
It's a great idea as long as you don't overwater, especially for the first couple of years, because you don't want the tree root bound. So, especially if you get a very dry year, you could lose all the trees. So Netafim, the great product.
Water it.
Right. That's why we would be putting in something, just a basic Netafim drip system, and zone it off depending on the water pressure.
Right. So that's included in the plan.
Yes. Yeah. That's not on the plan, but in my plan, it's included. Yes. I don't want to lose $100,000 worth of trees.
No.
Me either.
No.
Can I touch on? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Chairman.
Go ahead.
No, there was just one item that Kim brought up in her earlier introduction that's sort of associated with this. The wetland and the mulch that goes in the wetland, we want to be removing that. What we would plan to do is do a baseline or photograph the wetlands on the property before And then that way, everybody has exactly what they look like before we start this process, so that later on, if there's a complaint that the wetlands are getting mulch in them, we all have a document we can look at and compare that. If there's additional material, then that will all be removed by hand from the wetland. I don't think getting machine down by those wetlands is a good idea, so I think that's going to have to be by hand. But at least gives us a more realistic comparison as to what might be happening.
I think that's a good idea.
Because there's a lot of old historic mulch and fill that's in some of these wetlands already prior. So,
Well, will you be taking that out in the process?
most of it's ingrained. It's part of the wetland. I mean, we're not talking about 5 feet of the material. We're just
Okay.
talking about a layer
Right.
that's in there
Yeah.
that's really old. It's now
Okay.
part of the wetland.
Got it.
So just so the folks have, so the baseline, I think, will help everyone know where we started and where we are from there.
This seems like a good, like a big improvement to what we have. So I appreciate the effort. Anybody else in the commission?
I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
Relative to some of the reviews, the city departments, one in particular, through the fire department. We talked about, you mentioned about putting the fire line in, and whether or not the fire line and the hoses would reach the top of the pile if necessary. So I think there was a comment from the fire department that have you done the fire department inspection and incident planning, so that the hose, we know, reaches to the top, or the water pressure reaches to the top, and a fire protection engineering evaluation? Has that been done?
Yes, those have been done. We've submitted, we had 2 engineers, one to do the flow test, another to review the fire code and respond with various aspects of it and the plan. We had a follow-up meeting with that. We had proposed 1 hydrant, and the fire department had said they think that 2 would be adequate as long as the second one was in a good location. And we discussed that we're not really sure at this point what that good location is. So
The plan that that you're looking for us to approve does not show the second hydrant and the additional water line.
correct. And that's what we talked about with the fire department. Asking to approve this as we have it right now will allow us to put that first hydrant in and allow us some time to get the state fire marshal involved also to determine the best location for the second, but
How
not
long-
hold up the first.
How long would that take to get that location determined?
I don't know. We had the call with Captain Dowling this morning. He had mentioned he's going to reach out to the state fire marshal about scheduling a meeting, and he had said he doesn't know when that would be. And so that's what we had discussed, this 2-stage process.
So part of this 2-stage process, what we talked about is the long lead time items for the water main and the hydrant. So this is why we broke it into 2 phases, so that we could start with phase 1. We could get the materials on order and get them coming while we're waiting for the meeting with the state fire marshal, which I would assume would be in the next 90 days. So at least we can get phase 1 done. We had a second hydrant proposed, but Captain Dowling wasn't comfortable with him putting the exact location of that hydrant. And, you know, what he commented, and we all know, is that water is not necessarily what you use to extinguish a fire in a mulch pile. Because they're typically smoldering fires when you have one. So there's he's well aware of that sometimes when you put straight water on a mulch pile, that actually creates more of a fire. But he's well aware of that. He's well aware of the process to extinguish fire in a mulch pile. But so that's why we broke it down into 2 phases, so that we could get going right away on getting the project started and getting at least 1 hydrant in there while we're waiting for the state fire marshal. But at the same time, we'll have the materials on order for the second phase. And then when we determine where that is, we can put it in.
So the initial service line is going to be a 10-inch line to start with.
There's a 10-inch line in the street, and we're going to continue that 10-inch line into the property to the first hydrant. Depending on where the second hydrant goes, we will determine whether it's going to be a minimum of an 8-inch line. So it's going to be 8 or 10.
Okay.
And we'll be able to determine exactly what it is at that point.
Okay.
Do you, on your plan, do you show where the current hydrant or where the current hydrant is?
Yes, we show the one proposed location for the hydrant currently on the plan.
Okay.
My second question, so I guess in conclusion, my questions would be with regard to the closed drainage system at the driveway. So the concerns with that, if the system gets clogged, that the resource area will receive, it would run into that resource area and there's no way of rectifying that. So am I correct in saying that the weekly inspection of the drainage system is going to mitigate that problem? In other words, the system is designed size-wise to handle any storm water. It's just that if it got clogged, there'd be a problem. Is that correct?
Yes, the weekly inspection will greatly increase their ability to maintain that, the drainage function of that area. Yes.
But the system, it's sized to handle it, subject to it being not restricted by flow, restricted by silt or other matter that might get into the catch basins.
That's an engineer, Steve.
So the catch basins are in place to provide some water quality treatment, as is the hydrodynamic separator. In storm events that are of greater intensity than the water quality storm, which is a 1-inch storm over the contributing impervious, water is going to continue going where it goes presently, which is just overland and into the resource area. So what we're proposing is to treat the water quality event, and the catch basins will, contain any floating mulch, the hydrodynamic separator as well. And the weekly inspections will see how quickly those devices are filling up. And once they reach half of the sump depth, which in the catch basins, we're proposing 4 feet. So once it reaches a depth of, collected sediment and debris of 2 feet, it'll be scheduled for cleaning.
Okay. And if that takes place, if those are maintained, this should not be an issue.
Correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
All right.
One last question, Stu.
Go ahead.
Regarding Mr. Callahan's comments to that were addressed, sent recommendations to the Conservation Commission, and what is the applicant's response to those statements, recommendations that he made?
The 2 comments were the catch basin potential to get clogged, which we've answered with the weekly inspections. And then the second point was the mulch height recommendation. And that recommendation simply isn't workable for the process of creating the mulch. And so we've responded to that with the additional vegetation changes in the proposal that we discussed tonight.
Is the proposal, the height is like double of what the recommendations are? Is it double or triple? What is it?
Right. The current height of the piles goes up to the maximum fire code level of 60 feet. And
60.
so.
Okay. You mentioned that, sorry.
Yep, it's okay.
And just if the engineer could just quickly describe for me to understand the functionality of the looks like it's the drainage system looks like it's it's like you mentioned, it's all over land or sheet flow, and it's just if you could go back to the other sheet with the proposed conditions, I guess, drainage. So those are all so it's all the drainage would hit those kind of the curved depression areas first, and then fill up, and then fill into the square basin later.
Correct. It'll be collected by the first sediment forebay, overspill into the second sediment forebay, and then spill into the infiltration basin. And this is sized to hold and infiltrate the water quality storm. And again, in larger storm events of greater intensity, it would just continue overland where it goes presently. So the water currently leaves the site here, and in this corner here. But these treatment practices are being installed to treat for the water quality before it goes down gradient.
And
So
over time,
we're attempting to improve the existing condition.
and over time, those basins will be dredged per se.
The maintenance and inspection of the basins and the sediment forebays include, removing any accumulated materials that is
Yes.
within the basin or the sediment forebays. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Is this have to be open to the public at this point? Mike?
Yeah,
Yes.
through the chair, Stuart, I have some comments to make, but I'd like to hear from the public first.
Okay. Let's open it to the public.
Mr. Capuchetti.
Mr. Capuchetti's got his hand raised. Tony?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Lazarus. Tony Capuchetti with Hayes Engineering, and I think Jason Panos, the attorney for the abutter, is on as well, but he hasn't been promoted. But briefly, I have some concerns, and I think they're getting there. There's some new information that came out tonight that is promising, but we're just kind of hearing this information, as is the commission tonight. But I did just kind of summarize some of the outstanding issues, and I'll be very brief as I go through. So before the order of conditions issued, Horsley Witten had concerns with the closed drainage system. DEP had some technical comments that related to seasonal high groundwater and pre-treatment. And then we had issued a letter on December 21st to Bob Langley with some comments on the project as well. So Horsley Witten's said that they have some issues with the closed drainage system. We have some issues as well, in that, first of all, the Stormwater Handbook says that for each deep sump catch basin, only a quarter acre of impervious surface can be tributary to it. They have 3 deep sump catch basins with over 2 acres going to it, so you can't take the full 25% credit. And then the hydrodynamic separator that they're taking 75% credit for. If you go to the top and step approvals for the CDS separator, it's called out at 50%. If you run the 50% through, they're at 63% TSS removal for that treatment change. So again, they don't meet the standard in that area. Soil testing in the infiltration areas. The logs didn't indicate they were witnessed by the city, but they did address that tonight. We discovered some discrepancies in the soil logs. Stormwater Handbook covers if you discover trash, the trash should be removed if there's going to be infiltration. They did talk about that node and not infiltrating in that area. However, if any of it's going into the infiltration area, they need to come up with some sort of a plan and as to how they're going to remove the soil, where it will be stockpiled. There's no stockpile areas indicated on the site. If you've been out there, you realize there's large piles of mulch. So during the work, there really should be a construction plan, construction settling basins, construction access, and the like. We know that there's trash present. Horsley Witten brought it up during our permitting. These are the pictures of the trash, and that seems like it all is in that node that was brought up. So I'm going through very quickly on this. They did file a draft soil log in November, and then they indicated that there was trash in landfill in TP17. And then when they filed the final logs, it's just called soil and debris historical fill. So we have some questions about that, but if Will Politz was there, again, I'm sure he's looked into that. The soil logs don't call it seasonal high water table in requirement in the manner stated in the Stormwater Handbook. It's supposed to be done with modeling similar to Title V soil testing, and they just indicate groundwater elevations as observed. The standing water in their existing plan shows a water level elevation of 162.1 in that open exposed pond that was a replicated vernal pool that was filled in. Bottom of their basin is 164. Checking my math, that's still less than 2 feet. So that does not comply. And for an example, the water table elevations, when we did our project, we were getting 163.5 and we had virgin soil there. So that's a more representative water table for this area. They're calling out fill in all of theirs. So it's hard to find redoxamorphic features in fill. The infiltration basins require pretreatment. This was a DEP comment as well. They're proposing 2 similar treatment methods in a chain. That does not work. DEP does not accept that. That would be like me saying I'm going from a deep sump catch basin into a deep sump catch basin into a deep sump catch basin ad nauseum until I hit 80% TSS removal. That's not the way it works. And they're very specific for land uses with higher potential pollutant loads, specifically log storage and sorting yards, which a portion of this site is. They specify the pretreatment BMPs, oil and grit separator, sand filter, organic sand filter, filtering bioretention, or an equivalent. Sediment forebay is not an equivalent. So the project does not comply with the stormwater handbook. And then the concerns in our letter were the validity of the wetland delineation, the discharges to the isolated wetlands, and then again, additional compliance with the stormwater handbook for new projects. They classify this as a redevelopment. I'll get into that a little bit later. The wetland flags were hung 11 years ago. To date, they have not reestablished the wetland flags in the field. So I don't know how anyone's evaluated the edge of the wetland without seeing flags physically hung in the field. Not only that, but it doesn't encompass the whole site. If you remember back in 2018, 2019, I know the chairman was there, vice chairman, Mr. Comack. We had issues with the Just for Junk site, LaBelle Tree Service, and we were told that any further application would delineate the entire site for wetland line. And here we are relying on an 11-year-old delineation. The areas where the proposed hydrant are coming through, there is no wetland line in this area here. There's no wetland line shown in this area down here. So we don't know what effects, if any, and they don't discuss how the flow is going to be maintained in their notice of intent application. They're crossing under a culvert, I'm assuming. Could be over, but it doesn't look like there's going to be enough room. Are they going to pump around? How are they going to maintain flows? And then is the culvert going to be replaced? Because there has been issues with this culvert before being blocked. They analyzed the whole site as flowing to the isolated wetland system. We contend that they should be evaluated at each isolated wetland because each pocket could flood and overflow. And given the pile locations, we still don't feel that this is an accurate representation, that this whole area of the site flows towards our project. And I give you their existing conditions plan. If you start looking at the spot grades, we have a 179.7, 176.5, 176.5. It's 180, 176. It's all flowing in this direction. There's a low point here, 172.7. They don't account for any water that's going towards the BVW in this direction. And the conditions have changed continuously based off of the wrap that's been put out there, the reclaimed asphalt product, as well as the changing pile locations and size, not to mention their proposed plan doesn't show the piles, how the water will split and how they'll maintain grading around those piles to get the water to flow to their infiltration basin. The IVWs that are receiving the water, as been discussed, are full of debris. This was from the Horsley-Witten review showing the pictures of the layer of mulch that they're talking is being minor. If you go out there, it's over a foot deep. And in a minor rainstorm, it floods almost to our stormwater area. So redirecting the entire site to this area, it is going to cause some issues. Calling this a redevelopment when they haven't received any permits since 2008. And we've discussed this before, 2008 aerial photograph. The area of the site expanded almost 6 acres to 2018. Not a single wetland permit, yet they want to take advantage of the redevelopment standard. This is an after the fact filing for the work that's going on out there. And they should be held to the new standard. The design of the infiltration basin doesn't comply with volume 2, chapter 2. I've highlighted some passages. Storm associated with the brim full condition should not include the 1 foot of freeboard required to account for design uncertainty. So from where their discharge is, there should be a foot of extra storage in that basin to the top of the berm. And then they even get out to a common areas to direct the spillway runoff towards an adjoining property not owned by an applicant. If the emergency spillway is designed to drain the emergency overflow toward an adjoining property, obtain a drainage easement and submit to the Conservation Commission as part of the wetlands notice of intent. They're discharging directly to the isolated vegetated wetlands on our properties with no outlets. So this is an issue. Their basin doesn't provide any freeboard in any storm. Infiltration basin 1, top of berm, they call it at 166. 2-year storm, it's within 2 inches, 0.16 feet to the top of this berm along the whole length. 10-year storm within 1.5 inches. In the 100-year storm, their calculations show that they're flowing 1/10 over the entire berm. That could result in catastrophic failure. You start getting channelization through this berm, you'll take the whole berm out as soon as you start to channelize the flow. It's a safety issue. Not to mention all the material that'll go into the wetlands. So again, we're asking the commission to require them to establish the wetlands line in the field to be reviewed, comply as a new commercial development, do not grant them relief as a redevelopment, make sure they meet TSS removal, pre-treatment, and separation of seasonal high groundwater, analyze the effects on all the IVWs, as well as the potential effects to BPWs by rerouting base flow that's going to those BPWs away from them. So they're taking flow that normally goes to the wetlands away from them. Provide an adequate safety buffer in the infiltration basins. That means provide some freeboard. If it overtops, it could lead to catastrophic failure with damage to our property, injury to someone downstream, or if someone's caught in the mud, they could drown and die. It's a serious issue. As well as include all the proposed and necessitated work in the narrative and application, including any removal of landfill materials, the installation of the water line. And again, they're talking about a second hydrant that we don't know where it could be. They could be trenching entirely across the site through buffer zones, locating another hydrant. So again, I think the commission needs to get a full application before they can act. And I apologize for taking up so much time, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. That was enlightening. Can you send all that information to Brendan and to Lucia?
Raises a lot of questions.
They did. I just need to have it. They've written down all these things and looking to send it to Brendan and Lucia to get these issues resolved.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
I don't know. May you?
Thank you. Just to answer your question, and Tony, I'm sure we'll reiterate and send that documentation you've requested to both conservation agents. But he has been fastidious about answering the peer review as we've been able to review it. So you have a substantial record of letters from Hayes Engineering in your file addressing a lot of these issues. Of course, some new issues have arisen as the information has been supplemented. One thing I want to point out, and this is pretty upsetting, and it's the second time I've seen this. The applicant here is using the November 2022 return to compliance letter from the DEP, which relates specifically to the ACOP, which was issued. You may recall, Chairman, Vice Chairman Rizzo and Commissioner Comack, that there was an ACOP related to a violation, a JT Raymond applicant violation for illegal fill. This return to compliance letter that they suggest basically is a DEP acceptance of all uses and activities on the property, that everything is copacetic and hunky-dory. That's a complete fabrication. That return to compliance letter relates to that specific discrete issue of illegal fill. Nothing more. It doesn't relate to the illegal, unapproved violations of the Wetlands Protection Law and the local act, rather, and the local ordinance violations. Again, as Tony mentioned, this is an after-the-fact filing. So I'm not sure why they're putting this return to compliance letter forward as some magic bullet that indicates that the DEP has blessed all of this. They have not. And if you guys issue an order of conditions tonight, they will be looking at this separate and apart from that ACOP. And I suggest that they'll be issuing a superseding order for all of the reasons that Tony mentioned. The other issue that I'm really, really concerned about is, this issue of fire protection and safety has been around since February of last year. Captain Dowling issued to them a cease and desist letter, and they're only having conversations with him about things that have been on paper since that time for almost a year. Addressing them now with regard to water pressure testing and hydrant locations, it doesn't make sense that this morning they had a conversation with Captain Dowling when these issues have been out there for, as I indicated, over a year. The bottom line is, and there's another issue. This notion of the tree vegetation that they've just come up with today that we're hearing about, which suggests we'll accomplish the Horsley-Witten resolution of the Horsley-Witten issue of mulch and debris flowing into the wetlands. It's not going to do that. You're not going to get new vegetation that is going to screen the level of mulch and debris that finds its way to adjacent properties to accomplish what Horsley-Witten indicated as a significant and substantial problem. And I think Horsley-Witten needs to weigh in on this, quite frankly. They're the ones who brought it up. They are your peer reviewers. I think they should be suggesting whether or not a new tree line is going to be adequate to address the situation that they brought up. The bottom line is the plans are not complete, as Tony indicated quite thoroughly. It's missing material information. It's missing items that fail to address substantial technical issues that should prevent you from issuing or even contemplating an order of conditions tonight. Issuing. They've got a lot of work to do, and Tony has documented that. He will put another package together, but I just think that this is all very premature tonight, quite frankly, and there's just too much left unanswered, as Vice Chairman Rizzo indicated. That's all I have. Thank you for indulging my comments.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, at this point, Brendan, are you looking to take this back on and go through the changes with Horsley-Witten and come back with a recommendation? I mean, it sounds like there's things that are undone or need to get done before we can move forward with this. And realistically, if the mulch piles are huge, it's like, does vegetation take care of it? You know, will they still? I need a peer review to come in and say something about that.
If that's what you'd like us to do, we can do that. I can submit the well, it sounds like they need to update their plans and their O&M plan from the last peer review. So it sounds like they need to, at least at a minimum, incorporate all the updates that they said they were going to do at the beginning of the meeting, so they can look at that.
I'd like them to also review Tony's comments, and come back with responses on those.
Okay.
I mean, he's representing the butter, that is going to be adversely affected if the mulch continues to fly.
Yep.
And I'm a little concerned about the fact that they haven't really addressed where the water, I understand they're trying to put together 4 bays that will try and clean out some of the contamination or debris before it goes into a storm drain of some sort. But I don't see, I'd like to get an opinion of somebody, else that, get our peer reviewers to review the whole process and see if this works. There may be a better solution. I don't know what it is, but.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I don't want to belabor this. I just think I'm certainly not qualified to answer all the questions that Mr. Capuchetti brought up. So, and I don't think And I don't know if the city engineer is. So obviously, the questions that were brought up should be answered by our peer reviewer. And let them answer the questions. I don't know.
I agree.
I don't know if these are major issues or minor issues. I don't know.
The
I know
problem is,
but that the only comment I was going to make, and that's why I wanted to hear from the public. The only comment I wanted to make before, and I said this, I'd like to hear from the public first. A row of 6 to 8 foot Colorado blue spruce is going to do absolutely nothing for 60-foot high mulch piles. That's my only comment that I would say that I have some expertise in. Other than that, I don't know the answer to any of those questions that Mr. Capuchetti brought up. And I think our peer reviewer should basically say he's right or he's wrong, or yeah, he's right, but that's a minor thing, because I don't know the answer.
well, I don't think anybody does. That's why I'm suggesting we go back to the peer reviewer and answer the questions. And I also suggested that Tony send his data to Brendan and to Lucia so we can forward it to the peer review.
Tony has already sent it to me and Lucia. We haven't. We just received it during the meeting.
You received it just now?
You asked.
When you asked, you just sent it to me.
Okay, so we have to. I guess my recommendation is to continue this until we get answers.
I think.
May I ask one more question?
Go ahead, Tony.
Would it make sense to have myself as an engineer, Mr. D'Ambrosio, and the peer reviewer sit down?
I think that's a great idea.
I agree. I was definitely at some point being like, all right, the engineers need to sit down and come to some level of agreement of what is acceptable on both sides.
I think the elephant in the room is, two important questions that were brought up: whether or not this should be an after the fact filing, and whether or not the performance standards are being met. And I think if those different parties can get together and discuss this, we can get some resolution on those questions. Those are big questions, important questions.
Well said. Anybody else?
And just on behalf of the applicant, we're fine to incorporate the comments that we discussed tonight into an updated filing and submit that and respond also. Many of Mr. Capicetti's comments are premised on the argument that it's not a redevelopment, and we feel confident that the project is a redevelopment and also meets the standards, but we can put that forward in writing. And then if the peer reviewer would like to meet with both engineers, we're certainly open to that as well.
Great, that'd be good.
Also, I know the peer review has exhausted all the funds, and so we'll just have to work with Bob Langley and the applicant and everything, and to try to make sure that we have the funds to do the peer review.
Okay, just let us know what you need.
Okay.
Motion to close the public hearing?
I don't know if there's anybody else that wanted to speak on this before you.
No closing
Yes.
public.
Yeah, I don't think you want to.
You don't close the public hearing.
Right, no.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that needs to speak?
A motion to continue, or is anybody else that want to speak from the public? I don't see any.
Okay. Then I would like to make a motion to continue this.
Do I hear a second?
To when? When is?
Would
When
next
are we
meeting
continuing?
be appropriate, or?
We need to have a date.
The next meeting would be February 8th, but I don't know if we can get all the information done by February 8th. Do you?
Probably not.
Probably not, but I'm not the parties that have to get together and.
Well, we certainly continue to the 8th and review it at that point and see where we are.
Okay.
Through the chair, if there's going to be a meeting with engineers, Bob Langley needs to be part of that meeting.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'd recommend 2 months, and then due to timing of other people have to be, Mr. Langley's has to be included, involved? And Lucia, date of time, Lucia needs information to get on agendas.
Well, my reason for moving it as a continuance till February 8 is that at that point, it'd still be on the agenda and we can continue it again, but we know what transpired, that's all. If nothing transpired, we move it to March.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. This way we maybe get some feedback on whether groups have gotten together and are making progress.
Yeah, I don't want to leave this in limbo and say, oh, gee, it's March and we haven't heard anything. So looking, right, so the motion.
So my motion would
from,
be to continue this to our February meeting.
do I hear a second?
I second.
Arthur, thank you.
Roll call. The motion was made to continue to the February meeting made by Commissioner Rizzo, seconded by Mr. Athos. Roll call. Chairman Lazaris.
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo.
Yes.
Commissioner Vivaldi.
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
Commissioner Athos.
Yes.
And Commissioner Comack.
Yes.
I'd like to thank everybody for their time. This has been an enlightening evening so far.
This was a good meeting. This was a good
It was
meeting.
good. Yeah, I think that we will get this thing resolved in a couple of weeks. I would like to see a planting of something, if that's what's going to work, in the spring, so we can take advantage of time and get it done. This has been a problem for months and years, so appreciate everybody's input and keep us posted when the engineers are meeting.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have a public hearing on a notice of intent submitted by Hayes Engineering for Mills 58 LLC. Ed Greeley is the owner. The proposed work is a reconfiguration and paving of an existing paved area adjacent to an existing multi-tenant commercial / industrial building with building construction of retaining wall, landscaping, invasive removal and stormwater features in riverfront and buffer zone of Coastal Bank. The property is known as 58 Pulaski Street, Building A, map 53, lot 47. Is this who's here to speak for this?
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Well, you're their agent, your attorney also.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Go ahead.
Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street. I'm accompanied by Tony Capichetti from Hayes Engineering. Tony is going to give the bulk of this presentation because it is technical in nature, but I just want to give the Commission a little background. We received a comprehensive permit for redevelopment of a portion of this property to allow for 45 apartment units, 25% of which will be set aside as affordable under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B. It's a comprehensive permit. The decision was issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals in November. It was unappealed and the decision stands. So as a kind of, well, it's more than just loose end. It's a very important aspect of this project. We need to address the notice of intent that's being filed under the Wetlands Protection Act, not the local bylaws, so ordinance rather. I want to make that clear, and Tony will go into why that's important. But with that, I'm happy to take any questions at the end of Tony's presentation if you have any questions with regard to the comprehensive permit which was issued, but that's the underlying context of why we're here. Thank you, and through the chair, Tony, if you will.
Thank you. As Jason said, Tony Capichetti, Hayes Engineering, 603 Salem Street, Wakefield, Mass. I'm going to share my screen. I will try and talk slower than I did the last time, but try and be equally as brief. So Mills 58 project, as Jason said, is a comprehensive permit project. The development, you may know the existing Mills 58 building has some restaurants and the like. This vacant building houses the Essex Brewery at the bottom floor, will be converted to residential housing, and that's what's known as Building A. And there's also Building D, which was in front of you before that we got some parking permitted. This is going to be a unique project for you. It's going to probably be your only coastal bank filing that you get in town here. We're going to create 45 units of housing, 100 dedicated spaces, and a comprehensive parking plan throughout the site, which you saw portions of that for the notice of intent. We have 2 buffer zones on our site, or 2 resource areas. The riverfront area, which is this darker line here. The bulk of this area is already a paved parking lot. And then the 100-foot buffer to a coastal bank. Coastal bank line is this line here running at the top of the bank. Encompasses a bit more of the parking. Like I said, the majority of the jurisdictional area is paved. This is kind of a close-up of that area, showing the edge of pavement running around here, the 200-foot riverfront, and then the 100-foot river to the waters, 100-foot offset to the Waters River. It's a tidal river. So the proposed work is reconfiguring this parking lot. The bulk of the work is adding some landscaping, islands. We do pave a small portion in this area here that's kind of a gravel full of invasives, and adding some stormwater infiltration under the parking lot. This is a true redevelopment project. It was asked that we add this basin. We did, and we'd asked to defer the soil evaluation until after the fact. Horsley Witten and Bob Langley agreed, and I believe they sent correspondence to the same. These green areas are areas that used to be paved within the buffer zones that will be brought to landscape. And then the light gray areas here, and here are areas of the buffer zone that are not paved, although they are kind of fill and full of debris that will be repaved. In the end, what we end up with is a 15 square foot decrease in impervious area in the riverfront area. We're adding some landscaping, some plants of some benefit. We have some red pines, white firs, some red maples, as well as I think we had some red osier dogwood as well proposed throughout the site. Just some other benefits. The interior of the buildings is existing paved area that's going to be brought to a grass landscape area. I know this is outside the buffer zone, but I know these are some benefits, as well as other environmental concerns. We're adding solar to the roof with some roof gardens. I know Lucia's a big fan of the green roofs. This is kind of a compromise situation. Some sitting areas on the roof, like I said, garden, and then the outside the sitting area on the roof, the rest of the roof will be dedicated to solar power generation. So again, overall, we're seeking it to be an environmentally friendly project. I'll put the site plan back up, and if the commission has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Can you go back to the pictures of the slide of A, B, C, and D?
Yes.
And which one is this?
We're
A?
building A, so we're the parking lot that's adjacent to the building A.
Got it. And the river is back there above A, and
yes, and
that's the Waters River, right?
That's the Waters River, and it is tidal in this area.
It's tidal, yeah. Okay.
So I have a small question on, we've had visits on this overall site a number of years ago when there was busing issues with the buses being parked down by there. But we always recognized that this was the city's only location where we're in contact with the Waters River and our connection to the coast. And I'm just wondering if there's any enhancement with this project or anything that's going to be part of this project that would provide some enhancement or access or anything relative to beautifying that area.
So on our property, where we're seeking to remove the invasives, and I apologize for the late submission, but we got an invasive removal plan over to Lucia today. We're happy with any condition that says satisfy Lucia on the invasives, but it's a pretty basic plan, you know, cut, paint the branches with glycophosphate and hope they die off and stay on top of it. As far as an enhancement, what we did was we looked at this corner here and we're proposing to level this area out. We do have a little bit of a spreader that comes in because this is where all the parking lot runoff goes, but we'll put riprap and a curb around it to catch any trash. But the thought was to put some picnic tables for the residents here. So they would be as close to the river as you can get on this site. So we are looking to enhance as well as add some screening and some native type vegetation in the buffer around the parking lot.
The property owner, Ed Greeley, does not own the land behind this to the river?
That's
It does
correct. If I could answer that through
Go ahead.
Chairman and to Vice Chair Rizzo. I do want to make it clear that issue with regard to busing and the buses, and I was chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals at the time it blew up before us, is on a distinctly adjacent piece of property that we do not own or control. Our property is adjacent to us, to it. We do share an access drive and easement. And the other thing I would point out that in addition to the green enhancements that Tony depicted in landscaping, we're going to be creating a whole new group of residents who are going to be coming in and enjoying both from the rooftop and many of their apartments views of the ocean from Peabody that no one in Peabody has really, no resident in Peabody has really ever enjoyed. So that I would consider a nice enhancement. This is really an exciting project. And I'm really proud to have been a part of it for all of the reasons that you're seeing, but also as a redevelopment mill project. DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, when we proposed this, was really excited about this. It's something they don't often see. And I'm happy that the Conservation Commission is a part of it. And you know, adds another layer of input as we complete the approvals here. And one thing I didn't want to lose the forest for the tree through the trees. The reason why we're disturbing is because we're actually taking up impervious surface and we're adding green space, and we're doing it within that coastal area. So to the extent that's considered a disturbance, here we are. We're making a green disturbance, if you will. But
can I ask you a question about? Are they going to be rain gardens or just grass?
Tony?
You're muted, Tony.
You're muted. Tony, unmute.
You know, you'd think after 3 years I'd finally get the hang of this, but
It's all right.
So we have some plantings in there. We have magnolia trees, which are the kind of rounder ones. The red twig or red osier dogwoods are the ones that look like asterisks.
Well, my question is this going to be depressed from the parking area
No.
and a rain garden, or is it going to be a raised bed?
It's going to be a raised bed with curbing.
Okay.
So when we went through the stormwater, what we had was both for buildings B and C. Let me go back to here's a good. So building B and C, their entire roof was unmitigated directly out to the river. So we're adding the stormwater improvement that Leslie Witten recommended and we agreed to was adding this subsurface infiltration area that handles an inch of runoff off the roof.
My only question was if the green area was, rain garden or just green area, and
It's
you
just
answered it.
green area.
Okay. I mean, I like the fact that there's green in the corner with potentially, a sitting area and stuff. It's a nice project. Anybody else? Anybody on the commission have any comments?
Just a couple comments. There was some from DPS, depending on how we end up this evening. The infiltration system, that we make sure that the DPS is on site to inspect the bottom of the infiltration system prior to putting any other materials on there. And that as-built would be provided at the end.
There was some comments by staff. I think you indicated, maybe you didn't, but test pits have been done in locations of proposed infiltration.
So the test pits have not been done. We
Okay.
did provide Lucia with the Horsley Witten review that agreed with holding off until construction. And then Bob Langley also agreed, and I believe he submitted a letter to that effect.
Okay.
So is there any chance that in waiting for doing the test pits during construction, that you could encounter something that could actually require or be an issue that the project would have to change in any way?
No, so what we had arranged with Horsley Witten is if we can't infiltrate, we'll line and just use it as detention to slow the water down. And the other thing we talked about was looking at if we find an area that's unsuitable. I mean, this should be all outwash from the river. It shows as decent soils. The other option was reconfiguring the location to someplace where it would work. And then looking at a shorter infiltrator. These are the 310s which are the 30-inch 4-foot profile. They go down to a 12-inch profile, so we could modify and just submit it as a field change.
Okay.
And I will say that we did. Sorry, we are planning on doing the test pit sooner rather than later. So I've been in talks with the owner now that we have the approvals, looking at getting them done over the winter.
Is an LSP required on this project?
No, we've got a clean phase 1 and phase 2. The only contamination was inside of building B or C. So that was reviewed by Horsley Witten's LSP as well as part of the board review process.
Okay.
Another comment was we need a narrative regarding invasive species removal if it's got to be done, and how you would target each species, etc.
So we submitted that today. I know it is a late submission.
So you submitted it today?
Yes. So we got those comments the end of last week. We put the narrative together.
Okay.
We're hoping that's something that Lucia could work with our botanist and resolve prior to the issuance of the order, but we're still hoping that the commission might be inclined to close the hearing.
And then the last question was, is this proposed addition outside Concom's jurisdiction?
It is. And I did respond to Lucia on that as well. So as I said before, this is the limit of the 100-foot to the coastal bank. That's the furthest zone. And we have a small addition right here, which is outside the 100-foot.
Yeah.
And then they're actually going to connect. There's a deck area here. They're going to connect the two buildings. So the people from building A can pass through to building B and C and use the commercial uses without going outside.
How nice. Okay, I'd like to, does anybody from the public want to speak?
Can I speak through the chair, please?
Go ahead. You had your hand raised.
Yep. All right. These are just very nitpicky things.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I agree. This is a really exciting project. I think the city is very lucky that Ed Greeley is doing all the work he's doing on the Bell End, this property. It's just amazing. I think Tony's doing a great job. So some nitpicky things I have is I was able to read the invasive removal plan before the meeting, but my question is, I don't know if this is in the NOI because I reviewed the NOI like 2 weeks ago and I didn't look at it again today. You don't really mention in the plan or the narrative how you're finally stabilizing the area. Like, I'm assuming it's going to be a wetland seed mix.
Yeah, like a wet meadow or like roadside matrix, so not fully wetland.
Okay, so I just think we need to have that in there. Could you pull up on the plan? Can you just show us where you're actually going to be doing the invasive? It's not like right on the coastal bank, is it?
So there's, yeah, let me go to the next plan. Sorry. So a lot of the invasives are going to come out because they're basically at the top of the slope in here, as well as in this area here. So some of the work here, the pavement will be our invasive species management. But we have some that runs all the way down the fence in this area that we want to clean up. Basically to the top of the coastal bank here. There is some bittersweet vines that we want to go in and just cut because the base of them is off our site, but to keep them off the slope, and hopefully by establishing some of that erosion control mix, roadside matrix mix, that'll start choking some of it out. But it's something that's going to have to stay. We're going to have to stay on top of. The knotweed is kind of up in the flat area here. It's gravel, a lot of trash and debris that needs to come out.
So you are doing work in the coastal bank, and how are you going to do this work? Like, is there a plan? This is the only plan that you have, because I'm just wondering, when contractors or these people come on site, it said like specialists have to do this work. How are they going to know where they're doing this, and how am I as the agent, when this is over, am I going to know that you did this the way you were supposed to?
So we could add to the plan. The thought would be that this is all supposed to be cut by hand, and then the exposed limbs, exposed root, exposed stems painted with the herbicide.
Yeah,
So it has to be a license.
in the plan though, you mentioned that you're going to have I thought I read excavator. There's going to be some sort of a machine out there. So I don't, where are the erosion controls to protect? And how are you going to do work on coastal bank without altering it?
So we're just cutting the bittersweet that's growing up the bank. The knotweed's up in this area here. We do have an erosion control line. I wish I could mark up, but see the dot within the straight line dot. So right at the back and at the top of the coastal bank, we have erosion control there.
Okay, so you don't feel that because obviously if you're just cutting vines, you don't need erosion control. So you're saying that the work on the coastal bank is just cutting vines and just cutting stems and spraying into the stem injection?
Stem injection or depend on the knotweed, you're better off painting the ends of the knotweed, but yes, the stem injection. And again, the bulk of the bittersweet is all down here, so a lot of it's going to just be controlling what comes onto our site. But we do want to kind of beautify the whole area along the edge of the parking lot.
Could you show a limit of work line that you would, so a contractor would know not to go beyond that specific?
Yep, so we do show erosion control that'll be staked in place, although it's an error here. It has to be pulled back, but it's supposed to run right on the base of the proposed landscape wall. So we do have a little 18-inch, 2-foot high wall that runs along the edge of the parking area too, to stop debris from migrating in. But yeah, we'd be happy with any condition that requires us to stake it in place, do a pre-construction inspection with Lucia, which I think is a standard condition.
Yeah, I mean, is there any way, and I don't, I hate to ask for people to come up with more plans than that are necessary, but I feel like if you could just do like, it doesn't have to be an engineered plan or anything, just, you know, something like this, showing maybe where the plants are, so that, you know, like this area up here, this is Japanese knotweed, just so I know as an agent. I feel like it's a little confusing. That's if the commission feels that it's needed. I just know it's going to be
Well,
hard as an agent to go back out and like 4 years from now and remember what you just said at the meeting.
Well, how about a line, I called like a limit of work line, or how about a line that you could show how far you wanted to do that handwork? So we're not really excavating, just somebody's gonna be in there just with their feet and doing handwork to trim that vegetation and treat it. You could show a little shade. You could do that with a shading. So it would just identify, it's really not where the bulk of the construction is. It's just some handwork for control of vegetation and maybe shade that area. So
I think engineers think alike. So that's what I was thinking, was doing some color coded shading on like an 8.5 by 11 and putting it in the report.
yeah,
And then to have that invasive management an ongoing condition, because Mr. Greeley is planning on managing the site himself and handling the landscaping as he does currently. So we could keep that going. And
yeah.
I think that would be a condition that we'd be happy to do, and submit that prior to issuance of the order, if that's something that the Conservation Commission would accept.
Yep. And then I just have two more little nitpicky things. I'm sorry. As you were giving these things started coming up. Now I've seen on newer plans, people are starting to, or engineers are starting to, where you have tree islands, they'll cut a little bit of the curb out and have it so that the storm water can flow into the tree and feed it water, so that during a time of drought, they're still getting some water if it rains, even more so, not just from above. So that's just a thought, throwing it out there. You obviously don't have to do it. And then I noticed where those trees are going to be, you guys are going to be storing snow. Are those small areas the only places for snow storage? And what are you going to do when those areas are exhausted? Is there like a snow storage plan?
Yeah, so we have outside of this area, once we exhaust kind of the smaller areas and large storms, we're pulling all this area back here that used to be paved and making it pervious. This is on the Building D site, and this is going to be our larger snow stockpile site for all Building A, B, and C. So we're someplace where we can stockpile the snow in pretty large quantities, and then it'll go through into the drainage system, which we've designed now. We provided a hydrodynamic separator and a rain garden at the end as part of the Building D modification. So we're kind of presenting this small kind of corner, but we have engineered the site as a whole, because Mr. Greeley does control the Building D parcel as well as the ABC parcel, and the road all the way back to Peabody Municipal Light as part of the overall parcel here. So we have improvements with green space going up the road as well, in snow storage areas.
I'd like to ask a question if I may.
Sure.
Mr. Capuchetti, Mr. Panos, this is more of like a city council question, but the idea is that because the parking areas in the buffer zone and the 200-foot area of work, is the 2.2 that you quote as a 2.2 ratio parking ratio, is that I don't know the Peabody city requirements very well. Is that something that could be, is it just regarding potential reduction of parking to, if possible, to meet greater pervious areas in this area. So I don't know that this is what's required of city council or planning board, but is it possible to reduce any further?
So,
I'll answer that, Tony.
okay.
So we're under Commissioner Vivaldi, and through the chair, of course. This whole redevelopment proposal is under a comprehensive permit, Chapter 40B statute. So what that allowed us to do is seek waivers from the Zoning Board of Appeals, which was the sole permit granting authority, but for, you know, these Wetlands Protection Act issues. We are already, although not by much, actually, but we're already a bit shy of the parking requirements to support the residences. We're either a bit shy or compliant, but the decision through the Zoning Board of Appeals mandated our, and kind of, what am I trying to say? Has determined our parking. They have looked at our parking plan for the residences, and in order to seek a further reduction, we'd have to go back to them, and we really don't want to do that, just because we went through an 8-month process. So I hope that answers the question, but a lot of careful decision-making and back and forth. I mean, our parking plan was peer-reviewed for the Zoning Board of Appeals through Bob Langley. And we really needed to make sure this was going to work for not only the site itself, of course, the commercial component, which is ongoing, but the adjacent neighbors.
May I ask what the unit mix is? It 2 bedrooms, 3 bedroom, one bedroom?
You know what? I'll tell you in a second. I just was looking at the decision for the purposes of snow removal and storage, and I'll address that more specifically in a minute. So we have 20 one-bedroom units. That's 20 one-bedroom units. We have 20 two-bedroom units and 5 3-bedroom units for a total of 45 units and a total of 75 bedrooms. So Tony, just remind me, we have 99 exterior parking spaces. So
100 spaces actually, although one is kind of for the daycare use, so it's kind of a weird thing. But yes, so we had 2.2 spaces per unit, which is so the ones and twos, they require 2 spaces. The threes, it's 2.5. So we're just shy of zoning compliant for the overall project, but we're pretty close. And I am going to reach out to Commissioner Vivaldi before I go for these other projects, because that's always a big bone of contention. Is we always look to reduce parking, and the feedback we get from the ZBA is always, you sure you have enough parking? Because that seems to be a major concern. But as I said, we do have a net decrease in the riverfront area of impervious surfaces, and we took the opportunity, instead of fully, utilizing every space for parking, to look to add some green space closest to the river. We thought that was the most responsible.
Yeah, because through the chair and to supplement what Tony said, I mean, we do appreciate the unique nature of this redevelopment. I mean, as I indicated before, we are the only residential development that's going to have a view of Peabody's only access to the sea. And so obviously that extends to the outside, and making sure that to the extent possible, we do provide green space in the middle of this commercial and industrial island. I mean, you go further down 58R Pulaski Street, it's all industrial, and that really isn't going to change in the foreseeable future. what this adds is another dimension to this multi-use complex. I want to go back a little bit, if I may, without taking up too much time, to address the issue of snow storage. The decision, the comprehensive permit decision, requires that we do not plow snow to the extent that it would take up a parking space. We have to keep all of our snow storage off parking spaces. We can't reduce our parking through snow storage. So there's plenty of room on the extended site, that being, you know, the ABC campus combined with the D campus, where we can find snow storage solutions without impacting parking. But that is a mandate from our decision that we cannot plow snow into parking spaces. I thought that was important to clarify, given the past comment.
So just wanted to give you a better view of the existing conditions up on the
Yeah.
screen here.
Thank you. That helps.
And one nice feature too that we didn't talk about too much, that alley almost between buildings A and B. Yeah. Can you see Tony's finger? There you go. That alley is going to be greener.
We're proposing a courtyard,
Yep.
some landscaping, a path, bike storage will be inside in this area. This is where the elevators shaft will be as well. And then the daycare, again, not really a conservation issue, but I know you're all members of the residents of the city of Peabody. So the daycare that's here is going to move into the lower level. So this will be also a play yard for the daycare students.
And that lower level on that side of the building actually opens up into that courtyard. The topography is such that on the other side, it's almost a basement level, but on that side of the building where the courtyard is proposed, it's going to be a green area that'll act as an outdoor recreational area for the kids.
Yeah, so there'll be storefront windows.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there's a gym and the daycare downstairs that'll come out into that green space now.
That's correct. And you can see too, this atrium, the connectors, lots of use of glass so that sun kind of comes right through the new addition, the building, to the extent we can. We really hyper utilize the space we have, and we make the most of a lot of the efficiently make use of the space that we have, where we're doing additions to really enhance those recreational areas. It's a great project. As I said, it's one of the ones I'm proudest of. I mean, I don't know how many 40Bs. This is about the 4th or 5th one in the city that I've worked on. And this is a good one.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones. If you can convince Ed to give you a tour, the upper level, the views that you get up there.
Yeah. Actually, we can arrange a tour for you guys if you want. As long as you can close your hearing tonight, if you feel comfortable doing that. No quid pro quo.
There's a condition, huh?
There's no condition. It's unconditional. Whether you close it or not, you're invited to come to the property. If you haven't already done so, there are lots of amenities already there.
I have not, but I appreciate the offer. Anybody else? Go ahead, Rita.
I'm just curious about the water bank, the one where you're going to be taking out the I guess the invasive species and everything. Is that going to be open? Are people going to be able to walk down to the water bank from there? I'm just curious about that.
I'm gonna go with no. It is pretty treacherous, especially once you get off property. There's some trash out there. There's a lot of vines, a lot of thorns, brambles. My surveyors were upset when I sent them down to get the shots on the edge of the bank there. I don't see the average person wanting to walk down there. The idea is to try and keep this area kind of a level area for people to use and enjoy the view.
Sorry.
But
I'm just curious about, like, will there be any kind of like a barrier or something that would keep people from wandering down in there? And
so we have a retaining wall, varies from 18 inches to 2 feet tall, that we put right at the edge of the parking lot. I guess they could walk behind it here, but if you have the opportunity to go out there, this slope is pretty brutal. It's not something, and this is all kind of the lower you get, it's a lot of debris. So I don't see too many people trying to traverse this, but we do want to clean it up by getting the bittersweet and the knotweed, which is kind of up here, out of the way, and keep it down. It's the best thing for that slope. Get some vegetation on it that's more native.
And the other thing I would add to that, to your question, Commissioner Cavicchio, is that area, that parking area is exclusive use to the residents. None of the commercial tenants will have access to that, will have need to have access to it. That is specifically for the residences. The commercial tenants that Tony spoke of, the gym and the daycare center, will all enter and exit from either the interior of the building, the opposite side of the building, rather, at 58R, or through that courtyard area, but they'll have no reason to access that back parking lot.
okay, so the play area that you're talking about is between buildings A, B, and C?
Is between A and B.
A and B.
Oh, B
Right
and
here.
A and B.
oh, that's
Yeah, so it goes
it's A, B, C.
A,
Goes-
B, C.
okay, all right.
It only took me about 6 months to realize that the letters went backwards. I kept wanting to call this one A as well. So
Right.
it's
So the play area, I'm just worried about, the kids wandering off, if it's really treacherous, that sort of thing. But it sounds like it's not even near there.
No.
so this is the area for the daycare.
Okay.
So
It's really exciting. I'd love to go and look at it. Thank you for presenting it. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else? So are we,
Like to make a motion.
go ahead.
Yeah,
Like-
make it open to the public.
Have we asked if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak?
I did. I thought I did. But I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody raising their hands or,
So I'd like to make a motion to continue to the next meeting to allow Lucia to receive and review the documentation.
there a second?
A second.
Lucia, roll call, please.
Sure, through the chair, though, what documentation am I waiting for?
The information that you received today, I thought you wanted to review it a little bit more and
Yeah, I mean, I would feel okay. I don't normally want to close stuff, but I feel that if Tony could revise the invasive plan to talk about how he's going to stabilize the area with the seed mix. If I don't know if you guys were interested in having any depressions on the curbs along those trees. They already talked about the snow storage, so I wasn't worried about that. And then just another thing, while we're sitting here, I was thinking, and Rita started asking about, going down to the water. Then I started thinking, oh, there's a possibility maybe snow trucks could start dumping snow down there. Did we want some sort of granite posts or a
No
fence or
dumping, no
something
dumping.
saying no snow storage like we have everyone else do?
Or no dumping signs?
Yeah, like no, like conservation area, like whatever wording you guys want. I think in this area, I'm mostly concerned with snow storage getting dumped in there, because if we get a blizzard, that's exactly where it's getting dumped. And it's not like terrible for them to put snow in waterways, but you do need permission. And the most important thing is that you want it fresh snow, and then someone has to go back in the spring and make sure that everything is okay down there, because so ice and stuff can form and things can happen. But it's not terrible, it's the salt and the sand that's in it. But we obviously don't want people to start making a practice of that in the city, just like, oh, we're just going to dump it in there. And this is really convenient area to dump it in. So I don't think you guys need to continue this unless I think that Tony would hopefully get me the plans soon. The only reason why you don't want to close the public hearing is because as soon as you close the public hearing, the 21 days starts ticking that I have to issue an order of conditions. I don't think Tony and Jason are going in 21 days. If they didn't submit something to me, I don't think they're going to go to DEP and do this whole process over again. So I feel comfortable, but I just need to know if you guys agreed with everything I said. I didn't really get any confirmation that you guys, I'm assuming you guys, obviously we need to know what the seed mix is or what they're putting and how they're going to apply it. It sounded like you guys wanted like a sketch. I think we always need sketches when people, a sketch, it doesn't have to be an engineer plan. It can be something really simple. Like Tony could just take that plan, eliminate all the engineering stuff. And as he said, like put some color coded to make it clearer to myself, or if there's a new agent in 5 years, 6 years from now. And I don't know, what do you guys think about depressions in the trees, curbs?
I think the sketch is okay. Be nice if Tony could somehow make it part of the plan. So, because it sounds like it's a great opportunity to identify that area is an ongoing area where handwork can go to maintain the invasives there. So I don't know whether we can modify or add a detail to the drawing somewhere that could blow that corner up. Not do it on a sketch, but actually just make it part of the plans. I think that's great.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I was thinking of, so there's a standalone report for invasive removals. I was thinking of an 11 by 17 that could be made part of that report.
Okay.
And then that report could be conditioned in perpetuity for invasive removals.
Excellent. Okay. As far as the breaching the curbing, I don't know if that's necessary or if it's a good idea, because it's a raised curb. You can have plows coming, cleaning in that area and stuff. And I don't know if it's, I think are you putting granite curb in?
In the residential area, yes, it is granite curb.
Yeah, so I would probably prefer not to have it openings. I'd rather have a continuous curb, so the plows, when they are cleaning, they are not going to be hitting open areas, and we can maintain that 6-inch reveal unimpeded. And the only
there's also going to be a wall there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's going to be a wall back there. And again, given the condition that we can't plow snow and take up parking spaces, and there's a whole bank of parking spaces back there, short of destroying the wall, where we can't dump back there. So we would take a condition on that. No storage and the no snow dumping, in that area. Right, Tony? That'd be okay.
Yeah, we could put some signage in. If the commission wants to put some sort of educational sign for, one of your only saltwater resource areas, we could put that by the sitting area. So,
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, Commissioner.
Okay, and if the commission does wish to close the public hearing, then I would like to make sure that conditions in there that DPS be on site to inspect the bottom of the infiltration system prior to any adding proposed material on top of that, and that an as-built for the project would be submitted.
Okay, so I have that we need a revised narrative. We want a revised plan showing the invasive areas. But you guys really, no one ever really said if they want or don't want granite posts with signs. I think the idea.
I think that's a good idea.
I
I think
think-
that, through the chair, yes, I think that's a good idea because it's a simple thing to add. Put some posts along there, granite markers, with a little plaque on it saying no snow removal, or again, that's our only connection to the ocean. So, let's try to do our part to mitigate people having the desire to dump over there.
And then I don't know if it was Tony or Attorney Panos who said it, but the idea of having one of those like little kiosks over there explaining what the wetlands are, I think that is just amazing, because I mean, I don't know if it should be part of this notice or this order of conditions, but I think that would just be fabulous to have that if you guys feel the need to put something. I could even help you, I'm sure I can find some sort of literature somewhere about what to post over there.
I was about to suggest, rather than making it a condition, Lucia, we would work with you to come up with some signage. It was Tony's recommendation, but a good one. We want to be as green friendly as possible. So we'll definitely bring you into the fold and invite your recommendation. Lucia, have you been out to the site before? I think you have.
I haven't walked this portion of the wetlands, but I have walked all of 60 Pulaski, so I know exactly what you're talking about, the topography and the shell, how they drop down. It's not super fun to walk.
Yeah, so if you guys want to come to the property to see what we're doing, and to Lucia's point, a nice sign describing what the wetlands are. I mean, you see them down the Cape all the time. Particularly where you're walking down coastal banks and things like that. And I think we would do something. We would entertain doing something like that. It's a nice thing and informative and education.
Okay, so we have a motion right now to continue, I believe.
I'll make a motion to close with, and then make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Roll
Roll
call.
call.
Motion was made to close the public hearing by Commissioner Vivaldi, seconded by Commissioner Rizzo. Roll call. Chairman Lazaris,
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
and Commissioner Comack.
Yes.
All right. Is
Do
there a
we have
motion to
another
issue a
motion?
standard order?
Make a motion to issue an order of conditions.
The items we spoke about.
Yeah, we talked about those. We have to repeat that again, the condition of the DPS being on site to inspect the bottom of the infiltration system prior to adding any material on top of that, providing an as-built, and then the adding of the detail to the, what was that, the O&M plan we said?
Well, the O&M plan for the maintenance of the
Yeah,
weed.
maintenance of the invasives.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, the O&M plan should be in perpetuity and maintenance reports to be submitted via email to the agent. Annually by October 31.
As-built project. And let's see, are there any appropriate conditions that might be effective given where we are? Most of the, let's see. So we have, we should have 1 through,
I have 1 through 50 and then 51, the O&M in perpetuity, and then 52, 53 and 54 would be, Bob had 3 comments. I just had them up on the screen. I can pull them back up, but he had 3 conditions he would like to see. Here we go. Here they are. They're the ones you just read.
mhm.
And obviously I'm assuming Attorney Panos and Mr. Cappuccetti has seen this. You guys
We
must have.
haven't.
You haven't?
No, we have, and we're
Okay,
amenable
yeah,
to
yeah,
those.
good.
We have,
Okay, so those are the conditions I have written down right now. And contingent on a revised narrative, a sketch, and a revised plan showing granite posts with signage. No snow storage and environmentally sensitive area signage.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Well, I think Mike's still looking for some
Yeah,
conditions.
I'm looking at in the book there to see if there's anything that might be applicable relative to, riverfront that might apply.
I mean, the parking lot's outside of flood zone, correct?
That is correct. The flood zone is elevation 10, and it's
mean,
just,
do you think maybe there
the-
should be like a sign or two that just says you're near a flood zone? There's a possibility this area may flood for your car. I don't think it's required, but I don't want to have too many signs over there either.
yeah, I mean, so if you see this dashed line here, that's elevation 10, the long dash, short dash. That's elevation 10, and that's 5 feet below the parking lot vertically. So,
Okay,
I mean,
So-
if that floods into the parking lot, I think we have bigger problems.
yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, in the future, if it does start flooding over there, I would just say maybe, you guys, we should probably consider you guys putting some signs up just so that people parking right there are aware. Just not part of this, just in the future, if in like 5 years from now, there's flooding there, you might want to let people know.
Yeah, and I don't mind working with you on the sign. Maybe we can say, the resource areas beyond here include, floodplain and that sort of thing too on the educational sign for the time being.
And the only thing else I see that I think we've already covered this, but was under checklist D, which falls under the title of, rivers, basically, the North River, Gulf Wide Brook, Proctor Brook, would be recommendations for any removal of debris. When you were talking about down in that lower area, is it something that would be a big effort to clean up any debris that might be down there that's not
So,
short of a car or something?
yep, that's the plan. Bulk of the debris is, right at the top. So we are paving in that area. So there's a fence right here. A lot of the debris is up against the fence. So the bulk of that will be in here. But when we're cleaning up the slope, yes, anything that we come across for trash, we'll remove by hand on the slope.
Okay, so we'll check off checklist D and under the item recommendations for debris removal. I'm gonna leave it at that.
Did you say checklist D debris, whatever number? Debris
Checklist D,
removal?
which actually specifies the North River and the Gulf White Brook. I know this is Waters River, but I think in the spirit of being along a river, this would provide the opportunity to pick up some of the debris that's out there. And you would have permission to do that.
All right, any more conditions? That motion is on the floor by Vice Chairman Rizzo.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second. I made the motion, is that right?
That's good. Anybody want to second this?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Bruce.
All right, the motion was made by Rizzo, seconded by Comac. Roll call. Commissioner Lazares,
Yes,
Commissioner Rizzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio,
Yes,
Commissioner Athos,
Yes.
and Commissioner Comac.
Yes.
Okay, so that passes unanimously 7-0, and contingent upon those items, obviously.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I hope to get them to you no later than next Wednesday, ideally by Monday morning.
okay.
Monday's a holiday.
I get stuck working, but she'll see him Tuesday morning. But thank you all for your time.
Nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, and nice project.
Thank you. Good night, Commissioner.
Moving into enforcement orders. Can I take them out of order? This item 6 should be 2 seconds. Anybody have any objection to
I
my
don't
take?
think item 6 is going to be 2 seconds. I think Mike DeRosa, our consultant, has been waiting in the audience for over 2 hours.
No, I know, but, well, okay. Then I'll do it in order. Enforcement orders. Continued enforcement order issued to the Salem Country Club for the following activities: removal of living trees, grinding, grubbing stumps in a buffer zone in close proximity to jurisdictional resource areas, and depositing wood chips in the buffer zones and along local riverfront woods. The property address is known as 133 Forest Street, Peabody, Mass. We met, we had a public meeting yesterday, and we voted to receive a narrative of a restoration plan, but not a plan. It was a narrative. And we still don't have a plan from the Salem Country Club, which would incorporate, where the trees are, where they're going, and so on. Is there anybody here from the country club that would like to speak at this point?
Want to let our consultant speak or no?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hello,
Welcome,
everyone.
Mike.
Mike DeRosa here. Friday, we received the documents from the country club, which did not include a plan, which was one of the primary things the commission wanted, and that we wanted, because it's important to be able to see where they're going to be placing these trees so we can evaluate whether their growth and location is appropriate for the species they're proposing. And we want to make sure that the areas are covered with enough, plant material that it's going to be able to satisfy the commission's concern about replacing the canopy that was lost. So that came in. I didn't see it till Friday night. I was in the field Monday and Tuesday, and then we have the hearing tonight. So our plan is to reply with a written response to the commission by January 25th for the February 8th meeting. And we're hoping that before too long, we're going to have this plan. Their item number 5 in their response said that SCC's consultants are preparing figures to show where each new tree is proposed to be installed, showing the size and wetland indicator status of each species. So that's still, we're still waiting for that. And that's really the critical piece. We haven't gotten into specific comments yet, but we're going to do that between now and the 25th. So we'll have a full evaluation for the commission on the 25th for the February 8th meeting. And hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be in a position to make final recommendations then.
Anybody else? So what I'm saying, or what I'm hearing, is that we don't have a plan. We're expecting the plan to show up quickly and we can move forward.
So am I on?
Yeah, you're on. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, so it's, as what Mike said, it's important that we have plans. Engineering plans are going to show the restoration areas and the plants themselves, where they're going to be, how they're going to be planted, details that go with that. It's very important because it's unless that's specified and shown, we can't do our job. And there's no way of documenting and even evaluating that the plan that will be submitted to us is going to meet the spirit of the enforcement order and the conditions that we expect to see or happen as results of the restoration. So that's a must. We need to have plans that show all the work associated with the restoration for this project.
Anybody else?
I'm not going to be here at the next meeting when you guys decide all this, so it doesn't matter.
You can call in from wherever.
I have seen the responses from Salem Country Club with regard to the enforcement order items. And I have some concerns about a couple of them, but I think as a matter of housekeeping, you know, we in our past meetings, it was necessary that Mike DeRosa, DEC, have money put into account to do a peer review, so he can do his job unimpeded. And I think Mr. DeRosa had submitted a proposal of what the estimate cost might be to do this work. And it was submitted, it was sent to Salem Country Club. They pushed back on the amount and asked Mr. DeRosa to revisit the estimate and see if he could kind of refine that. And he did so and submitted back a new number that was accepted. And then we've heard more recently that Salem Country Club has pushed back on providing the funds to put in account to cover that cost. And that they decided to cut it in half and said, we'll give you half of that for now, and you can ask for the rest later. That's not acceptable. We want the entire amount put in an account for our peer reviewer to use it as he needs, so he's not restricted and he can do his job. I don't want to delay this project. Every time you guys submit something, if there's changes and that there's more work involved, Mike's gonna get back there, there's another site visit, make comments. It's a lot of work reviewing these projects like this. he can't be dealing with wondering whether or not he can't work today because there's no money in the account. So I want that money put back in the account to cover that cost. I want that done now. So hopefully you'll agree to do that, and then we can move forward to get this project moving.
Is this where I can hear from their attorney? Or somebody from the country club?
Yes, thank you. We just got promoted to this discussion. I appreciate it.
Welcome, Barry.
Barry Fogel for the Salem Country Club. Couple of things. Let me start with the issue of the peer review cost. We got an initial request the first time around for a total amount of $15,000. $7,000 of that was the estimate for DeRosa Environmental, and $8,000 was the estimate for Ben Staples. We put that $15,000 in the account, and lo and behold, there was like an $8,400 overrun on that amount without any notice to the Salem Country Club. After that, the Salem Country Club put that amount in without objection, or with objection, but without fighting it. And then DeRosa Environmental sent a second proposal for $28,000 without any sufficient basis for that estimate. We asked that that amount be revisited, which it was, and the DeRosa Environmental proposal was adjusted to $14,000. The Salem Country Club asked, because of the overrun without any notice, that DeRosa Environmental would provide updates on their billing every 2 weeks, which they agreed to. The club put $7,000 into the account to make sure that there was adequate funds for them to begin their work. And we told Lucia and the commission that as DeRosa Environmental billed time to the account, if we got to the point where additional funds turned out to be necessary, we would review what work was required and what was being done, and would add additional amounts. The club is not willing to put unlimited amounts of money into this indefinitely as this project goes on. We've reached the point where the restoration plan was submitted. The club and the commission got comments from DeRosa Environmental and were billed approximately $2,000 for that. We just got a second notice from Lucia that DeRosa Environmental had told her that no additional billing had been incurred in the most recent 2-week period, which means there's at least $5,000 still in the account that can be available. So the club thinks there's plenty of funds in there for any additional work. Second, after we received the comments from DeRosa Environmental in December on the restoration plan that was filed in November, it was for the first time suggested by DeRosa Environmental in those comments, comment number 5, that figures might be assembled that would show where trees would be proposed and what species would be located in what areas. We made an attempt to do that by asking DeRosa Environmental to provide us with the underlying data that they had used to develop what they called canopy loss figures that were in their canopy loss assessment, which was their earlier memo in October. Our consultants made an attempt to put some figures together. As it turned out, the majority of those canopy loss figures actually were based on shadows from aerial photos, as it turns out, and do not overlay buffer zone areas where the club either removed trees or is proposing to plant trees. So not only was it for the first time suggested last month that there would be figures required before any planting was done, but we've made an attempt using their figures to develop something, and it didn't work. So here's what the club was going to suggest yesterday at the public meeting, but you used that meeting to hold your executive session. We understood it was on this agenda tonight. The club suggests the following approach. Bill Rocco needs to order trees before the end of this month in order to have 2-inch caliper trees delivered for the planting and season in March, late March, early April. We don't know exactly where trees are going to be planted because there are roots and rocks in the areas where trees would be planted. So the specific locations can't be put on a figure. What the club is suggesting and what its arborist and forester Tom Miles has suggested is for a 2-inch caliper tree, the root ball is going to be roughly 2 feet in diameter. And so the hole that's going to be dug using the ANSI or ANSI standards is going to have to be likely at least 2 feet deep and probably 3 feet in diameter. We don't know exactly where those trees are going to end up, although we know where the buffer zone areas are where the tree planting will be proposed. We would GPS the exact coordinates of where each tree is planted as it's planted and give the Conservation Commission an as-built for each of the buffer zone areas where the trees are planted, according to the list that was attached to the plan filed in November 30th. And that way we'll have a specific indicator of what trees are planted where and exactly where they are, as opposed to just giving you a cartoon of some sort that shows where we could space them, but without knowing whether there's in any particular area a sprouting stump, for example, which the DeRosa folks appropriately suggested we should manage by selective cutting of sprouts to try to encourage the most robust sprout, if you remember that part of their comments. So what the club is suggesting is that we move on. I mean, we've been trying to get this going so that we can get ready for the spring planting season. And delaying this to wait for some kinds of figures that we don't have a basis to prepare because the canopy figures, as we say, seem to be inaccurate and based off of shadows on aerial photos. Let us take the buffer zone areas where we know trees were cut, as shown on the delineation plans that you got from Weston and Sampson earlier in the year, last year. And we gave you a list of the trees that are proposed for each of those areas, which correlate roughly to the areas shown on the DeRosa plans. And we will get some trees ordered. Obviously, the nurseries are telling Bill, and hopefully the DeRosa folks can confirm this, you don't know exactly what species you're going to be able to get delivered as they become available and in competition with other people who are ordering trees for the spring. But let us get the species that we've suggested, which are off of your list. The list was adjusted to add oaks and white pines, as was commented upon by the commission's consultant. And that way we can move this forward and get the restoration plan, more of the restoration plan implemented. We've already done the chip removal and given you a report on that. And all the other features of the plan, I think, are pretty much agreed upon. I mean, there are a few elements that need to be discussed, but we'd like authorization from you to go ahead and order trees and get this process moving.
I think that's all well and good, but my thought and my suggestion is, I think for our engineer to be able to do his job properly, you need to prepare a plan that shows how the number of trees and the size of trees that you're going to plant is going to be such that in 10 years that canopy is going to be restored. Unless you provide a plan, how can our engineer do his job? How can he review that plan without knowing how many trees you're planting, where they're being planted, and whether or not that's going to provide the proper canopy cover.
I understand your question, Mr. Rizzo. As you saw in the narrative that was provided in November 30th, the Salem Country Club and its consultants don't agree that there has to be exact replication of canopy. Number one, we have questions about the methodology that was used to develop that calculation by the DeRosa environmental folks, but we don't dispute that there's been some change in canopy, which is why the proposal that the club gave you back in June and why the proposal now is to replant trees in the buffer zone areas where trees were cut. But this is not a situation where the club believes with its consultants that there needs to be an exact recreation of canopy. We question the premise that the cutting of these particular trees has any adverse effect on the resource areas that are adjacent to the buffer zones. We don't think there's a temperature issue. This is not for example, as our consultants have told the club, this is not a situation where you have a forest canopy over a section of the Charles River in Dover, and if trees were cut, you're going to change the temperature gradient on the water in the Charles River in between Dover and Needham. These wetlands are buried in the forested areas of the Salem Country Club already. We're talking about, in large part, the vast majority of the trees that were cut in buffer zones were in the outer limits of the 200-foot buffer to the drainage ditches that are intermittent streams. Those trees and that canopy has no effect whatsoever on the stability of those banks of those ditches. And the report presented by Steve Riberty, who's now with Goddard Environmental, documented in the record that you got last summer that there's no adverse effect on the capacity of the resource areas on the course to function as they're meant to. So the club questions the idea that there needs to be exact replication of canopy, but the club has agreed to plant the equal number of trees in the locations where trees were removed. We just don't know that we're going to be able to obviously put them in specific locations. And so waiting for that, we think is unnecessary in the context of what we're trying to achieve here. I even sent an email. Let me just, one last thing, if I could. We sent an email to the commission through Lucia and with Mike DeRosa involved, asking for an opportunity to have a meeting last month where it would be a non-quorum group of the commissioners, Lucia and the DeRosa folks and Ben Staples and the club and our consultants, to just look at the figures, look at the maps and talk it through. We thought that kind of a meeting or a charrette would be the most productive way to get this thing moving and get this stuff resolved. And we still are more than willing to participate in that kind of a discussion where if you have a non-quorum group of the commissioners who want to sit in on it, but to get the consultants and the forester, Tom Miles, together with Ben Staples, would seem to be the most efficient and productive way to resolve some of these issues.
Lucia, got your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to go back to what Vice Chairman Rizzo said about the money, but while we're on what Attorney Fogel's talking about, he keeps saying that in the enforcement order it doesn't say plan, but I think he's just confusing. Most of the time when I write plan, I mean plan, a plan with figures on it. What you've submitted, in my opinion, and I believe everyone on the commission's opinion, is a narrative. And we just had the person before you, they're going to have to draw a plan for invasive removal, not something of this magnitude. So I have been doing this since 2006, and I have never worked on a restoration plan where you only have a narrative, unless it was in someone's backyard and they're putting like 4 blueberry bushes and it's, you know exactly where the blueberry bushes are going because the yard is tiny. So I find that rebuttal a little peculiar. So I don't know if the commission, I mean, certainly I think it's fine if Mr. DeRosa wants to look and say, yeah, these plants sound great. But we still at some point are going to need not like a printed colored GIS, like an actual plan, because if I'm not here in 5 years, if I'm not here in 6 years, 7 years, I don't know how anyone's going to ever know what was supposed to be done and where it was supposed to be done. This is such a large site. I don't even remember where half of the holes are. And I've been out there like, what, 10 times now, probably more than that. And then just to go back to the money and the escrow account, originally it was a $28,000 request from the consultant. Mr. DeRosa was not at that meeting, and Attorney Fogel was managed to get you guys to drop it down to 14. There was an actual motion made for $14,000. And then I received an email from Attorney Fogel stating, we're not going to give you the $14,000 that was requested at the public hearing. We're only going to give you $7,000. Now, Attorney Khan will pursue that additional $7,000 if that is what needs to happen. I did speak to Attorney Khan, and he said that you are required to put that in the account. You agreed to it at a public hearing. You can't really hold us up and keep us hostage for trying to hire our peer reviewer. So what you don't understand is sometimes it can take weeks. Like if I have to wait for you to bring me a check, it takes you 2 days to bring me a check. Then it takes maybe 2 to 5 days for the treasurer's office to physically go and walk the check and deposit it. And then it could take up to 2 weeks for me to have the check drafted and mailed out. So we're talking weeks of waiting if the money is empty, and engineering and environmental costs are not cheap. So that's all I want to say. We still do not have a plan, a restoration plan. We have a restoration narrative that was received last night. So technically, it's my opinion that you're not in compliance with the enforcement order at this point.
And I would further say that I think we have a difference of opinion as to whether or not you feel you need to restore the canopy. That's our opinion. Okay, that's our consultant's opinion. That's the opinion of DEP that we spoke with. So we need a plan. We need a plan. We're requiring a plan. As part of the enforcement order, your restoration plan has to, we're requiring to prepare a plan that's going to show these plantings that you, as best of your ability, can demonstrate where they're going to go, and let us look at it. Let us see it. We need to see a plan so we can make a proper evaluation as to what you're proposing is going to restore that canopy. That's our enforcement order. If you're not going to do that, then just tell us you're not going to do that. That's what we're asking. That's what we're requiring.
Oh, we understood, Mr. Chairman. As I recall seeing in the DeRosa environmental invoices, they have a 30-day period, which probably every consultant has and everybody does for payment. They're not going to have any problem getting paid. They had no problem getting paid before. The problem we had was that the estimate that was presented, and I think Mr. DeRosa even put this in his email, goes, we really have no idea how much work is involved. And so the idea of just giving unlimited funds to the commission for DeRosa Environmental to continue to do work that, you know, at some point it needs to taper off. Number one. Number two, Mr. Rizzo mentioned something about DEP saying they believe that the canopy needs to be replaced. Where did they say that, and who did they say that to? We've never seen anything regarding that. And number three, the only comment that was made by Mr. DeRosa's group in their report was that generally there's science that says that removal of trees can have an adverse effect on water temperature, I think was part of it, in wildlife habitat. That's a far cry from an analysis that provides any kind of evidentiary support for the kinds of things you're asking for, which is a complete replication of canopy. But despite that, the club has agreed to plant 233 trees in those areas. In fact, we gave you a plan in June, an actual figure of the course showing where the delineated buffer zones were and where the areas were where trees were going to be planted. But while I respect what Lucia says about the kinds of things you get for restoration plans, I can guarantee you that you've never seen anything at the scale like we're talking about here. And the prospect of creating landscaping plans for tens of thousands of square feet of planting and trying to show you a bubble image of where a white birch is going to go versus where a red oak is going to go is an impossibility. I'd like to ask Mr. DeRosa or his arborist to describe how they think that's possible. We don't know where those trees are going to go because we don't know where we're going to be able to put the exact hole that will carry that root ball. You asked for 2-inch caliper trees, which has a large root ball.
We asked for 2-inch caliper trees at a minimum.
That's right, but so you
minimum. And,
right,
and
so
a minimum
that
and a
comes with-
minimum of 233 trees.
And anything larger than that is going to carry a larger root ball. It's an impossibility to show you where these trees are going to go other than showing you the areas where the trees are proposed to be planted as polygons, which we already had done back in June. Now, what we would suggest is let us order the species of trees that you had on the list that we gave you with the adjustments of taking some out as DeRosa Environmental suggested and putting in pines and oaks. And between the time now, this month, and by the time we are certain there won't be any deep freezes and the trees can be planted late March, possibly late March, certainly early April, we can get going on planting trees and we can mess around with figures and drawings and plans that show the polygons and how we can try to figure out how that might correlate to the canopy figures that DeRosa Environmental presented. But that's going to take some time because those canopy figures, pardon me, they don't line up with the buffer zone areas where the course where trees were cut. We think we're in agreement on giving you, the club is giving you what the commission has asked for as restoration. And yet we need to get going at this point. We need to get trees ordered so that we don't miss the spring planting season. We don't know exactly what species we're going to get from any particular nursery. So it would be impossible for us to draw figures. And Lucia, the comment that through the chair, what Lucia said of you need to know what's done is exactly what the as-built would show, is that if we can get 233 trees planted during 2023, they're going to be GPSed in, they're going to be stabilized with guy wires, they're going to be protected as necessary, they're going to be supplemented with, as we said, shrubs and pollinator species in certain areas. It's hard to tell what more needs to be done to get the ball rolling on this.
Well, I'll defer to our consultant, but my personal feeling is that I don't see how the number of trees that you're proposing and the caliper of those trees are going to replicate that canopy. I don't see how it can be. I don't see how that can be done. And unless I see something on a plan that shows me where these trees could be planted or would be planted, and so we can at least, and also agree or disagree about where the trees are planted.
Well, one thing is clear.
But until you submit a plan, because it's your job to submit a restoration plan, until we see a plan, how can we do our job?
We gave you a list of the areas that corresponded to the DeRosa polygon. We identified them by number based on their square footages. Now, if you even assume that you translate that square footage in some places was a shadow that might correspond to the area of the buffer zone, we allowed 600 to 800 square feet for each of the trees that would be planted, which is roughly 20 by 30 is 600 square feet. And that's the canopy of these trees full grown, and then some. So the idea is that by getting these 233 trees planted, that by the time they mature, they will recreate canopy of that square footage in those areas. I'll say one more thing too, on the issue of, is it necessary to exactly recreate whatever the square footages of canopy that the DeRosa folks calculated using comparisons of aerial photographs with long shadows on them? As you know, we filed an appeal of your first enforcement order and stipulated with city solicitor to not serve that complaint because we told the court that we were attempting to resolve this with the commission without appealing the requirements that you were imposing. We amended that complaint to add allegations relating to your amended enforcement order, and Attorney Khan and I stipulated to the court last month to extend the time for serving that amended complaint until late March, another 90 days. If we can't work this out over the issue of the premise that we have to recreate exactly some canopy area, which we don't believe is founded in an actual analysis of what was the potential impact of what was done out there, then it's going to be litigated. We don't want to do that, and the commission certainly wouldn't want to do that, because no trees will get planted and nothing will get restored. And so we think we're giving you what you've asked for, despite what our consultants have put into your record, stating that there's no adverse effect from what happened. This is a 400-acre property with 300 acres almost of forest. And the club removed trees on the borders of some buffer zone areas, mostly distant, almost 150 to 180 feet from these drainage ditches that are intermittent streams under the regulations, but that won't see any impact to them from the trees that were cut.
Mr. Chairman, if I may cut in, I'm sorry, Barry, to talk over you,
Please
but
do.
we
Please
get
do.
your
We've been
point.
wanting to speak with you.
We get your points. This is what I suggest, given the hour and you still have more things on your agenda. I appreciate Barry's offer to get together with the technical people and members of the commission. I was not aware of that, but I would have jumped at that had I known. So I would say let's have that have that meeting together, go through, thrash out everything with Ben Staples, myself, and Barry's team, the country club's team. We'll come out of that meeting with a resolution, and then the club can start ordering trees and get ready for next season. I think the big issue for us and for the commission is that we want to be able to see where these trees are going to be going in the context of what trees are going where. And also, I like Barry's point about locating those by GPS, so at least there's some record of that as an as-built plan. So I think we can get there. I just think, we're looking for certain things, and as Lucius said, Barry, it's not complicated to put a plan together, whether you call it bubbles on a plan or whatever, but it helps to go back to an image that represents generally what we know. You can't put every root ball in the precise location. I mean, we do this all the time, Barry. This is not not anything new. So so that's what I suggest, that we schedule something now or by email later for next week, and we get together and we hammer this out, because it's been dragging on far too long, and we got to get to go here.
Thank you. Bruce, you got your hand up? You're muted though.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, I appreciate everything Mr. DeRosa said. I appreciate everything Barry said. And I think a lot of good points are made. The one point that I want to make sure that everybody heard that Mike said is that the trees that we were asking to be planted, they were 2-inch caliper at a minimum. And they would, the amount of trees that we asked were at a minimum. I happen to think it's laughable that you can want to replace 223 trees with 2-inch caliper trees, at the minimum, 2 feet diameter breast height with 2-inch caliper trees. It'll take 50 to 100 years to grow those trees back to the canopy that was lost. Now, again, I'm not disagreeing with a lot of the things that anybody has said here. I just want to make sure that everybody understands we're not asking for that much. As far as putting bubbles on a plan, I don't think that's, and I think that a meeting would do a world of good. But as far as, we're not asking for a lot. That is absolutely ludicrous that the club is saying that we're asking for a lot. If we asked for 4 to 1, it probably wouldn't do it. That's all I want to say.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Brer.
One thing I said was that we made an attempt to use the figures that Mike DeRosa's team sent over, and we weren't able to work with those to create any kind of plans. We think that the best thing might be to use the delineation and the GPS dots that Weston and Sampson put together. We might be able to use those and create plans that is, or figures at a scale, but that's the kind of thing we want to talk about. Number one. Number two, I don't mean to pick a fight, but I just have to respond. We understand, this was stated a year ago. The club understands that the commission is unhappy, isn't the word for it. That work was done, this work was done without a prior filing. But the question is, has there been any adverse effect on the wetlands on this course?
I don't
Other
think.
than the 12 trees.
I don't think that's,
if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Barry, I don't think that's, I don't think that's the question. I think the question is, you did work without prior approval. That has always been the question. The fact that we're asking you to restore what you did remains undone. We would like to get some traction and get this stuff done. I want to see the tree. And so asking for permission to cut down 20 trees and then cutting down hundreds of trees is not the same thing. I would like to see from now on the club be proactive in contacting the commission for any kind of tree work that's in buffer zones. You had to do a delineation after the fact to figure out where you were. It's backwards.
Well, we've contacted Lucia for every
yes, but
every
that's
time we wanted in the last year, as you know.
After the fact.
As you know, no, before the fact. For the last year, the club has taken obviously the message from this enforcement action and has.
But that's after the fact. The fact is,
Mr. Chairman, if I could, for everything that the course has done in the last year on that property, they've contacted Lucia in advance and asked whether, about everything. We filed a notice of intent for the temporary water line to the pond and so forth. My point is this. If a request for determination or a notice of intent had been filed for the removal of the 200 and not the trees, and there are 12 in wetland on number 8, and not the vegetation on the bank of the pond on 2, but for all the rest of those trees in the buffer zone, a demonstration would have been made, and it's been made now after the fact, but it would have been made that that could be done without any adverse effect on wetland resources on the property. And replacement of those trees, I would submit, would not have been a requirement.
Why didn't you do that?
Well,
Yeah.
we don't want to go back over the fact that the club believed that it could do it because they were in managed parts of the course, but that's water over the dam. Where we're at the point now is that where the club disputes is that they believe that the replacement of trees is punishment as opposed to just simply replacement of them for an environmental benefit. But the club's prepared to do that. That's so,
Okay.
as Mike said, it would be a great thing for us to sit down together now and put that together, because we're around the bend already on the club is prepared to do this, even though it doesn't believe from an environmental standpoint on this property that it is necessary, but they're prepared to do it.
Okay, Arthur, you had your hand
I
raised.
just want to say, Barry, you're making like an analogy here, like there's a bank robbery and the robbers are caught and they get to keep the money. So what you're asking for, it's like, what harm will it do? What harm has it done? Prove it. But that's the point. That's beyond the point. The point is that you did something in violation, and there's repercussions for that. And it's really not a lot of repercussions, by the way.
Well, and that's why the club is where it is, which is
Let me offer
free
this.
to do that. That's exactly right, Mr. Avis.
I think the idea of meeting next week or as quickly as we can is a good idea. I'd like to pursue that, but let me throw this out there. And you hired somebody to show us that there was no adverse effect on the environment, and the critters and the plants and all that stuff would come back. That's fine, but as a country club, you're getting a tax break because you're maintaining open space, and that has a whole different connotation in environment and climate and air quality, things that you're providing with trees that are growing or plants that are growing on your property. I am not in a position to resolve or discuss your tax abatement, but I would like to see the trees replaced. And I think that's all we're looking for at this point. So if you could set up a meeting and get this going, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think our suggestion would be that it would be, Mike and folks from his office and Ben Staples, Lucia. And then, as I say, I think a non-quorum group from the commission obviously means that we can then have a discussion without it being a public meeting. And we'll bring our wetland folks, our forester, and the folks from the club, and we can work through these issues.
How do we want to arrange that meeting and schedule that meeting?
I guess, is everybody comfortable doing a live meeting in person? I think that would be easier.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of, I'm happy to sort of send out an invite that asks people, give us, I think we wouldn't want to set aside like 4 hours, literally, right? Like either a morning or an afternoon. Mr. Comack shaking his head. Do you think 2 or 3 is enough?
No, it'll be 4 or 5 for sure.
Well, it's hard to go longer than 3 or 4 hours before people.
Well, let's just try to schedule that, Barry, if we
Yeah.
can. It's very late and the commission's been going at it for a long time.
Yeah.
So we'll have plenty of time to talk later.
Yeah.
Let's send out that email. We'll schedule something. I'll block some times off next week and we'll make this thing happen.
Good.
All right.
Bruce, did you have something to say?
I would just like to say.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Go ahead, Bruce.
It's the one meeting that I'd like to meet, and I'm not gonna be around next week, but whatever. I'd like to be there in person, but if it is what it is. So. I'm not gonna be around next week.
Mike,
I could be there.
I could be there too. All right. Send out a note with
Yeah, we'll schedule
proposed
something.
days and times and we can respond.
And I-
If it-
Do you, Lucia, I mean, did you guys have a location that works? I mean, we can get a room at town hall maybe or something?
I need to know the date first, and then I need to, like, there's a process to reserve room, so I would need to know the date and the time frame. And so who, if there's a chance we might not be able to have a room next week, so
Let me ask Bill Rocco. Let me ask Bill Rocco if we can meet at the club. Can you promote him quickly to?
and through the chair, I just want to say you also have to read the announcement for the enforcement for Mayor Tree. I believe his attorney is in the audience. I don't know if you want to do that and lump this in, or if you want to wait, treat these separate.
At this point, my thought was that between Barry and Mike and yourself, we can figure, you guys can put together a date, place, and time and just get it out to everybody to confirm or not confirm.
Bill, can we use a room at the club, do you think?
Yes, we have a boardroom that can accommodate.
Great. So everybody knows where that location is, obviously. So we'll work something out for next week where we can meet at the club property. Good.
All right. I don't know if I want to do it separate, but it should be included or something. Item 5, continued enforcement order issued to Dan Meyer Tree for the following activities: removing of living trees, grinding, grubbing, stumps, and buffer zones in close proximity to jurisdictional resource areas, and depositing wood chips in buffer zones and along local riverfront woods. The property address is known as 133 Forest Street, Peabody, Mass.
Stuart, are we gonna continue the other previous one, or just gonna continue both after this completion of this?
I would like to continue both together.
Sure, okay.
Okay, just because they're somehow or other intertwined. Kate, you're there, you gotta unmute yourself, but the issue is the issue. I'm sorry, what did you say, Arthur?
We're only continuing the golf club, right? And we're discussing the Mayor Tree presently?
Yeah, because we can't do anything with the golf club until we have a separate meeting.
Yeah, and if I could, Mr. Chairman, they're separate enforcement orders, so we'd like to have them kept separate, and we appreciate your attention to this tonight. We will be in touch about a meeting for next week.
Then let's get a motion. Get a motion to continue the country club.
I make a motion to continue the enforcement order for Salem Country Club at this time till February 8th, 2023.
Do I get a second?
Seconded.
Roll call.
Chairman Lazar, Commissioner Lazaris,
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio,
Yes.
Athos,
Yes.
and Commissioner Comack.
Yes.
All right, and just before we move on to Mayor Tree or Meyer Tree, so Barry, it sounds like you are refusing to add that additional 7,000 that was requested at a previous meeting. I'm just trying to, because otherwise I'm gonna have to have Attorney Khan get in touch with you to pursue.
Yeah, I can
additional
explain it
funds.
to him. I thought I understood from Mike DeRosa when he responded to our inquiries that if we put 7,000 in, he would get,
It doesn't really matter what.
Yeah, it does. He
finish
responded that they would give us invoices every 2 weeks, which they've done. They've used 2,000 of the 7,000.
Yeah, but
We're not
There's
at
a
risk.
motion. can I just finish speaking, please, Attorney Fogel? There was a motion for 14,000. I've spoken to Attorney Khan, the city solicitor, and he said that motion, you were required to deposit 14,000, not 7,000 one time and 7,000 whenever you feel like it. So he said that if tonight you refuse, he will pursue it. So you will be hearing from Attorney Khan then.
Yeah, have him give me a call.
Okay,
I expected, he had indicated he was going to contact me today after the executive session yesterday, and he never called. So, but please do have him.
well,
give me a
because we
call.
wanted to talk to you, we wanted to talk to you first, but all right.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you, Barry, for tonight. We'll wait to hear from you on location and time for the next meeting.
Great. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
thank you. Moving on.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Bill, thank you. Moving on to Meyer
Thank you.
Tree. We certainly have a fine laying in front of you for basically just, cutting trees without necessary permits.
Can I just interrupt? It's really important that you guys mute yourself, because I keep muting you and you guys keep unmuting yourselves when you're not speaking. You really have to mute yourself. You don't hear the feedback, but everyone else does.
Okay. Kate, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kate Carter on behalf of Daniel Mayer and Mayer Tree. I have to admit that I too was anticipating hearing from Attorney Khan after last evening's executive session, and understand that there is a clerk magistrate hearing on the citation issued in association with this enforcement order. I'm prepared to respond to the questions of the commission, but we believe that Dan Mayer and Mayor Tree are both in compliance with the enforcement order. Mr. Mayer attended 3 separate hearings, all at the request, at every date in which he was requested to attend. He in fact did attend, so he attended. I have the dates here, Mr. Chairman, but the February 9th, 2022 public hearing, the March 23rd special hearing, and the June 15th, 2022 public hearing. So in contrast to the enforcement order that's issued to the club, the enforcement order issued to Mr. Mayer and to Mayor Tree requested his attendance at certain hearings, and then the production of certain documents. And I'll just address those very briefly. There is no written contract that was executed between the country club and Mayor Tree. The work was quoted on a lump sum basis, and then subsequently the parties met at the club property and walked the site. And then the club, and through its, I believe its director of grounds and landscape architect, sort of tagged and identified the specific trees. And because of that, we see a distinction, and I believe that the club has in fact acknowledged a distinction between the roles of the club and Mayor Tree. And the club has said both in writings and before this commission that they take responsibility for this, for the conduct and the resulting enforcement order. So as it relates to the documents, there was no written contract. And then to the extent that there was a subsequent request, I think at the May 11th public hearing, there was a request by certain commissioners to see invoices or documentation concerning what, if any, profit was made after the trees were chipped and moved off site. So again, just by way of context, after the trees were cut, they were processed in the parking lot and chipped there. Some of those, I think some of that material was removed. Mr. Mayor has a facility in Plastow, New Hampshire. I think he appeared at the June 15th hearing and explained this and provided the information. But to the extent that there's a request for information about what, if any, profits Mayor Tree may have made off of the processing or resale of those chips, or subsequent or potential resale of those chips, it is our position that that's beyond the scope and jurisdiction of this commission. But in any event, Mr. Mayor provided information responsive to that request, which is to say that there is a cost associated with shipping the material up to New Hampshire prior to resale, and that any anticipated resale, and I'm not sure if that material has been entirely sold at all, would not offset those costs. So we think that information has been provided. And in this sense, Mayor Tree is in compliance with its enforcement order. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I believe you're muted.
Anybody else want to comment?
There's the question of the fine.
No, the fine, I want to wait for Attorney Khan to get back to us on the fine. I think the issue here might be that Mayor Tree has years of experience in cutting trees, and as such, they should have known to pursue a permit from the city to cut the tree. If they were told by the Salem Country Club that the permits were obtained, they have engineers that have designated what was done. I mean, that's not good for Mayor Tree. As a personal, if I hire somebody, I'll ask them to show me liability insurance documents. I'll ask them to show me things that they've done. I want to know that I'm protected. And so the issue becomes one of, why didn't Mayor Tree call Lucia and say, hey, we want to cut down a bunch of trees, okay?
So would you like me to respond, Mr. Chairman? So the question is the determination and delineation of trees vis-a-vis wetlands and jurisdictional areas. And certainly where Mayor Tree is not the owner of the property, is not in a position to delineate, it is not Mayor Tree's practice for it to be responsible for obtaining any permits or entitlements associated with any type of work, whether it's zoning entitlements or in this case, Conservation Commission entitlements. It is a practice within the industry that the owner be responsible for that, because of course the owner is in control of the land, has knowledge of its wetlands delineation, and is therefore in a position to apply for the permit associated with that work. It is not Mayor Tree's experience within the industry for that work to happen. And I understand that this line of questioning was something that was discussed at prior meeting minutes. It's one of the things that's challenging for Mayor Tree to understand is the distinction that's made where, again, the landscape architect and the clubs was directing this work, and yet this commission opted solely to seek an enforcement order and subsequent fine against Mayor Tree, which again was not in a position and did not control the selection of the cutting of the trees, nor would be in a position to understand the delineation of the wetlands vis-a-vis the trees that were being removed. And I think that's consistent with the club's representations that it was taking responsibility for this work.
Through the chair, I'd like to respond to that. So Mayor Tree, he has a vast knowledge and experience in tree cutting, in forestry. He's been in business a long time. And he was hired by the Salem Country Club to come on property and to remove trees. In my opinion, he has an obligation as a professional in his field. When asked about cutting trees, he knows the difference He knows the difference between right and wrong and when a tree might be cut down that's in a wetland. You know, he's experienced, he knows this. And it's my position or my belief that he was cutting down trees that he knew should have been questioned, that they were in a wetland, they were in a buffer zone. And the question should have been, do you have a permit to do this? Because this is not right. I shouldn't be cutting these trees down. They're in a wetland. And they were just cut. And so I don't know why he did it. I don't know if he was ordered to do it, but he's a person, he's an individual. He knows the difference between right and wrong. He could have said, I can't cut these trees down. You'll have to find somebody else to do this because I'm not going to cut these trees down in a wetland unless I know these are permitted. And so that's the position we're taking, that he knew that the trees that were cut down in resource area, the buffer zone and the wetland, should have been questioned.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Go ahead. Yes.
So, Mr. Rizzo, you are correct that Mr. Mayor is an expert and has a vast knowledge about the removal of trees, but he is not a wetlands expert. And as I understand it, many of these trees were within a specifically delineated buffer zone established under the Peabody wetlands bylaw, which is distinct from necessarily buffer areas established under the Wetlands Protection Act. So understanding the delineation of that buffer zone vis-a-vis the location of these trees would not be within the scope of Mr. Mayor's expertise. In terms of the understanding of what he was removing, it came from his client and as I think you've heard from Mr. Fogel and from the club previously, they understood that they had, and I understand that there's a difference of opinion between the club and this commission, but they understood that they had authority to remove a certain number of trees and that they did not otherwise need entitlement. And I understand that the commission disagrees, but certainly Mr. Mayor's client's position was that they did not need additional entitlements for the removal of the other trees because they were in previously maintained areas. So this, I don't believe, and I respectfully disagree, Mr. Rizzo, that it's incumbent then upon a third-party vendor to double check, in fact, the assessment of a wetlands delineation that is outside the scope of his expertise and would require him to rely on the expertise of others. That's how I would respond, Mr. Rizzo.
Well, you do know, I hope you know that at least 18 of those trees were in the wetland. I think anybody would know, certainly a man of his experience, that he is in a wetland. And he took 18 of those trees were taken directly out of a wetland and cut down.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Kate, I think we're just gonna have to agree to disagree because he, like Mr. Rizzo said, I mean, some of these trees like were on banks of wetlands and I mean, I own a property with wetlands and I wanted trees to cut down and I had 3 different people come to my property and saw wetlands and were like, no, we're not touching that. So, and he boasted, Dan Mayer boasted about his vast knowledge and experience when I had questioned if he'd ever cut down this many trees. And he says he cuts this many trees down every day. And then he knows about, utility. He works under utility lines, which also have a lot of protected wetlands. And he should have done his due diligence. He was looking at dollar signs. He's got some twisted ethics. It's just that it is what it is. We're going to disagree on this.
Lucia, you got your hand up?
Yes, through the chair. I just, I feel that, I think there might be some inaccurate information that Attorney Fogel stated earlier, as well as, Attorney Carter. From what I understand, at first, when I first started working on this, I thought the streams might only be locally jurisdictional, but they are connected to state regulated bordering vegetated wetlands. And I believe, Mel Higgins and Devin confirmed at some point, like months ago, back when they used to come to these meetings, that they were state jurisdictional because of the connections to the state resources. So that's my opinion. I haven't also read any of this stuff for a very long time. So I just don't want any misinformation going out there that these streams aren't state protected as well. I believe that they might be because of the connection to the state regulated wetlands. As far as, I think Mayor Tree, I hope he knows, and Attorney Carter, if you could please let him know that if he is going to continue to do business in Peabody, we do have a tree protocol. An arborist or a tree specialist always has to fill out paperwork for one tree, not 233 trees. That has been on the books for years now. I think that policy was created in 2019. So that's something he needs to do. It's something as simple as he could have walked into the woods, went onto this, take his cell phone, went onto the city's website, pulled up my telephone number and been like, hey, I'm at the country club. I'm about to cut 700 trees. Do you have is it okay for me to do this? And I would have told him, you can cut 20 trees down over by holes 7 and 8. I think that's 6 and 7 or whatever on the other side of the course. So I think your argument, although I understand your argument, I think it's inaccurate as well. And Amanda made another good point, and I can't remember who, I think Vice Chairman Rizzo, he actually went in wetlands. He was standing in wetlands and cut trees down with whatever equipment he was in. And then I don't know how you can stand on a bank, literally inches from a pond, and think you're not near a wetland.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I just want to, we've never said, the club has never said that those streams were not state jurisdictional. We said that the buffer zone is larger to them under the local ordinance than it is under the state. The state buffer zone is 100 feet, the local is 200. But our delineation and our reports have never disputed that those streams, some of those streams are state jurisdictional. Thank you.
Yes, and to clarify, Mr. Chairman, my comment about the buffer zone related to the 200-foot buffer zone under the local bylaw, and just like to respond, Mr. Mayor and Mayor Tree does not have questionable ethics. This wasn't a job that was motivated by money. This was a job done in the ordinary course at the direction of his client. There was snow on the ground at the time, so his ability to confirm the condition and the existence of buffer zone wetlands was limited, nor would it have been his responsibility to do so in the ordinary course within the industry. I appreciate the information about the tree protocol. That is helpful, and I will certainly share it with Mr. Mayor to the extent he doesn't already know it. And again, as it relates to the specific items that were in our enforcement order in terms of remaining in compliance, which related to attendance at the specifically requested public hearings, which Mr. Mayor has complied with, and separately, then the production of documents, which we believe is beyond the jurisdiction of this commission, but separately have responded to that and provided that information orally at the June 15th hearing. We believe that we are in compliance with the specific enforcement order. And as it relates to any of these other comments, I think those are specifically related to the validity of the fine, which we intend to raise and argue before the clerk magistrate at the next hearing, if we're not able to speak with Mr. Khan prior to that time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Have a motion to continue this?
I'll make a motion to continue.
Second.
Second.
Okay, Roll call?
That motion was made by Commissioner Rizzo, seconded by Ms. Cavicchio. Roll call, Chairman Lazares,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Not there.
Commissioner Comac,
Yes.
and Commissioner Athos.
He's muted.
Yeah, but he's also not there.
Well, it can pass 6-1 with him not voting,
Okay,
because we need to move on.
we need to move on, but thank you, Kate, for your time.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Moving on, last item, enforcement order issued to Alfred DeMambro, trustee, Regency Realty Trust for work located at 1113 Wall Street. There are ongoing as well as historic violations on this property, illegal dumping, appliances, etc., stockpiling of various items in a riverfront floodplain, fill in a FEMA floodplain, alteration of riverfront without permit, and ongoing use as what appears to be a contractor's yard. We got a letter from your lawyer, and we just received it like a day or so ago this week. So I didn't have a chance to review it, and I don't think our attorney has had a chance to look at it either. So I would like to continue this until next month and we can get through it. Okay?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
So Richard Nyland, I would have appreciated if you would have told me that 3 hours ago.
I tried to move you guys up.
I did provide this document to you last Thursday. I'm not sure why you didn't get it until this week.
Well,
first of all, my name is Chip Nyland. I'm representing the trust.
I did receive it, and it was sent to me directly. And I forwarded it to Lucia, and Lucia sent it to the commission and to Attorney Khan. That's where it got delayed. Go ahead.
Understood. So I think I would just like, since I've sat through this, and I think it's, even though the hour is late, I think it's important because it's a great distinction between what's happened on our property versus what I've just listened for 2 hours with respect to the Salem Country Club. And the thing will obviously be continued, but for purposes of the next meeting when we discuss this, you know from being on the commission, and I was on my own commission for 10 years, when you file a notice of intent, the burden is on me to provide evidence to the commission that the work that I'm performing is not going to alter a wetland resource area. When an enforcement order is issued, the burden is on the commission to demonstrate exactly what the violation is. And the two problems I have are, number one, it's difficult for me to determine, since this site has been a contractor's yard for more than 100 years, exactly what violations you're alleging have taken place. And number two, there's no acknowledgement within the enforcement order that this is an existing use that's taken place. Much of the soil has been there before the Wetlands Act. It's been there before the ordinance. And the contractor's yard, in terms of bricks and other materials, contracting materials, have been there prior to the ordinance and prior to the Wetlands Act, and they're still being used. So contrary to other cases, we've got an existing use that's taken place out there. And if you'll also see in my letter, I've cited your wetlands ordinance specifically exempts existing uses, and ordinance was enacted. Now, this ordinance with respect to the riverfront couldn't have been before 1996. Because that's when the Rivers Act was enacted. So all of this work that took place out there was before 1996. So the ordinance doesn't apply. So, I would hope that the commission is able to read the the document. We can take this up at the next meeting, but, our view is that this is an allowed use. We have that use that's taken place since 1905. I've presented that information to you. Everybody who's in Peabody knows that that's what's taken place. We did remove the appliances that were referenced. Well, those were 18 months ago, those pictures, those were moved long ago. And I'll say finally, when I went out to see the site, the police were out there because people dump things that we're responsible. We have to take them off. There was a couple of homeless encampments back there that the police are trying to get rid of. So, we're doing our best to clean up the site for those things that we didn't place there. But a lot of the material are things that have been there for a long time.
The issue in this case, as far as, I read your letter. I haven't studied it in detail, but I did read it. And the issue that I'm concerned with is that the dumping of materials, regardless who's doing it, you own the land or Alfred DeMambro owns the land, is responsible now for changing the riverfront. And that's the problem. We have to get the riverfront back to where it was originally. Because right now it's changing the floodplain and it's changing the elevation. We can discuss this next month, okay?
Yeah, I would like more specifics because I see a plan that was submitted with a notice of intent that has a series of piles that was part of an ANRAD and then approved by the commission as an ORAD 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago. And so those materials have been there. So I would like to know if that's what you need to tell me what the violation is.
By your admission, there's continued dumping and storage of materials. There's pipes, there's all kinds of stuff over there.
Through the chair, if you look at the current photographs of the site and you look at the street view photographs, which were 2 years ago, the piles have changed. There's piles of dirt and earth, not just building materials, but there's earth and block and brick and piles of earth, which is altering the floodplain. The city of Peabody has spent years and is spending millions of dollars to get federal funding to try to mitigate flooding in downtown. And here we are in the floodplain. You guys come in and you bring material in, you make these big piles. It's like building a building. And then maybe a year later or 6 months, you move the building and you put back another building. I'm using a pile of earth as a building. You're taking up volume. This is a floodplain. How can you say this is a permitted use?
Well, I'm going to say it's a permitted use because it's an ongoing contractor's yard. The zoning bylaw allows for pre-existing non-conforming uses, which it's been a contractor's yard since before zoning and before the Riverfront Act. I think that there's probably a factual dispute. I sat on my commission for 10 years. I do this for a living. I clearly know what you can do and can't do in a floodplain. The floodplain's at elevation 15. Great portion of the property is above elevation 15. And if I understand where you think those piles are, I believe that they're not in the floodplain. The floodplain is lower down towards the river/canal, and I'm not aware of any new materials that have been placed down there. There may be some materials that are placed up by the park. And by the way, if it's a trespasser, yeah, then we get rid of that material. We know we're responsible for that. But other materials used as part of the business, whether it be for piping or for bricks for facades. We spent a lot of time and energy in the Peabody library with materials. We've done sewer jobs and used cinder blocks and other materials that are on that site. That's what a contractor's yard is. It's used for staging for development. It's been that way the whole time. But if you can point to me exactly where those, I just sat through the Salem Country Club. There were 223 trees cut. You know where those were cut. They know exactly what you're alleging. I don't know when I walk out on the site what you're alleging is a violation, because it looks to me as if that site is as it has been for, forever.
Can I just say a word through the chair?
ahead.
The difference between a non-conforming use refers to the zoning ordinance. However, some of the things that are going on might be violations of the municipal code or state laws, which is different than having a zoning, a right to have build a building in a particular zone. So I have a hard time following that argument. But you go down, I go down there a lot because I use the post office. Sometimes I park in there. I've never seen any new materials being stored in there. It's all rubble, basically, mounds of dirt, 4 feet high. It's a junkyard. It's not a contractor's yard, it's a junkyard. And maybe you'll do something to make it look better.
Yeah, I appreciate your point about the non-conforming. The reason I raised that, this has been a contractor's yard for 100 years. It's been used for those same purposes. And your ordinance specifically states that doesn't apply to those uses or structures that were in place at the time that the ordinance was enacted. And that this contractor's yard has been used for those same purposes since the early 1900s and falls under an exemption under the ordinance. I'm not saying we're exempted under the Wetlands Act, but we are under the ordinance. It's very clear.
Well, I think it's important. Let's find out where elevation 15 is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on, it happens to be on the plan that I provided to you. I wasn't involved with the ORAD, with the notice of intent or the notice of intent, but that elevation 15 is on the plan that you approved in September of 2020.
And wasn't that along the culvert?
Is along by the culvert. Are you talking about by the canal? Are you talking about
the canal?
It's a river, it's not a canal.
Okay. It's certainly a river under the ORAD
Right.
without question.
And-
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. It's lower. I mean, I believe that it bisects not in half, but it bisects the property going from east to west, and it's closer to the canal than it is to the library.
Right, and I think the elevation near the canal, which might be elevation 15, in looking at that, you got to see that the site has been filled and more material has been added there to that property. It's like 3, 4, 5 feet higher than the canal.
Well, that's
Then
been that way.
then there's piles of dirt on top of that, and rubble and brick and all kinds of stuff. To me, it's an infringement on the floodplain.
If that was new material, then we could have a discussion about that, but that's not new material.
It certainly looks it. All right, we're not going to resolve it tonight, and I would like a motion to continue and get input from our lawyer and give us a chance to review your letter and the ORAD. Okay.
I just need to make one last point, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time. Since this enforcement order was issued in September, I have 60 days to appeal it. I filed an appeal. I have not served it, but I do need to serve it within 90 days, which is this month. So you will be receiving, and city solicitor will be receiving a copy of a complaint that I filed. So I don't want you to think that that's as a result of this evening. It's just we have to protect our rights, as you're well aware. But since it will probably happen before the next meeting that you'll be served, I just wanted the members to know that has nothing to do with what took place tonight. If we resolve this thing, we will dismiss it, but I had to reserve my client's rights.
We understand.
No problem. We're used to that.
Okay.
Okay. Do I have a motion to continue?
Motion to continue this item.
Second,
Seconded.
roll call.
So, Chairman Lazaris,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Rizzo,
Yes.
Secretary Vivaldi,
Yes.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Cavicchio.
Yes.
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 and Commissioner Comack.
All right.
Wait, I didn't hear Bruce. Did Bruce leave?
I think he's gone.
Okay, if you guys really got to tell me when you leave meetings, it's kind of unprofessional, but I don't know what time he left at. I'm assuming he just left at like 10:30. So the motion passes 6-1 with Bruce no longer in the meeting.
Bruce
He's
is
here.
He's connecting.
Here we are.
There he is. Bruce, I think you're muted, but
I got knocked off, so what happened? So what am I, I didn't hear
Roll
anything.
call
I
to
got knocked off.
Continued.
Motion to adjourn.
Continued.
motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
No, what,
Nope, we're
actually,
on-
was
we're
the
actually
motion
just
can,
continuing it, and you were the
It was-
last
Yeah,
person.
to continue.
it was
All
continued.
right, yes.
Okay, other items?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission.
Thank you, and we'll see you in a month.
I just
or-
got one
or-
thing to say. Can I say one thing?
Yep.
Before, when I was saying that I had tree people come to my property, this was many, many years ago, before I knew the magnificence of wetlands. But all those trees did fall down like dominoes. So.
Well, I mean,
I actually did.
they all, eventually
Those, like,
trees die, whether they're, in wetlands or not. I have,
Oh, my.
I have a willow out back
It-
that's
it,
falling apart, but that's, anyways.
But that's all right. Motion to
Through the chair,
adjourn.
there's two
No,
people
no, I
in the
have other,
audience that
there's
have
other
their hand
items.
raised.
We-
Through the chair.
Oh, no.
We have to approve the minutes.
Can you guys not hear me?
I can hear you.
Through the chair, there's two people with their hand raised. I don't know why
Oh,
they're
there
raising their
are.
hand.
Go ahead. Kate, you're back?
I will allow her to talk.
Okay, thanks.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman and commissioners, for prolonging this. I realize that I failed to ask when you made a motion to continue that motion wasn't to continue to a specific date. I assume it's till the next hearing date, but I wanted to make
Correct.
sure that was stated on the record.
February 8th.
Very good. Thank you. Good evening.
And who is SR?
That's my colleague, Susan
Oh,
Murphy,
okay.
so no need to address her concern.
Okay, yeah, it was February 8th, and we'll see you next month.
Very good. Thank you. Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you. We have minutes to approve from December. Lucia sent out a draft, and we looked at it last night and it was corrected. So I need a vote to approve, or a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Second,
Seconded.
roll call.
You can just raise your hands for this if you have your camera on, but I guess if you don't have your camera on, let me do the roll call. Commissioner Lazares,
Yes.
Commissioner Rizzo,
Yes.
Commissioner Vivaldi,
My hand's up.
Commissioner Green,
Yes.
Commissioner Fabrizio,
Yes.
Commissioner Athos,
Yep.
and Commissioner Comack.
Say yes, Bruce.
Unmute, Bruce. You're on mute.
Deciding
I
vote.
believe I have to abstain in last month's minutes.
Okay. Okay, motion to adjourn?
That was already made.
I'll second if it wasn't a second.
Raise your
Yes, that
hand
was
if you
actually
want
a real motion. You weren't just kidding. So who, you made the motion, Mike Rizzo?
Originally, yes.
Okay, and who seconded? I missed it.
Me, Arthur.
Okay, if you
Raise
guys
your-
just want to raise your hands.
Yep.
All right, so 10:48, the meeting adjourns.
Good night,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you, PAT.
Good night.
Everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good luck next Next meeting.